We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the UBA Account Manager Academy. This is my first Account Manager Academy, so I'm very excited to be here. We have an amazing curriculum for you today, starting off with a bang. There is something to learn every minute of today and the next couple of days. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to work some short breaks in between the presentations. If you need to jump off for something short and urgent, of course, feel free to do so, but you really don't want to miss more than a couple of minutes at a time because every moment is valuable to you. I appreciate if you could keep your cameras on. Because we are remote, this is the way we will get to know each other's faces. And keep in mind that you will start seeing each other and recognizing each other at conferences. And these are the folks that you're quote unquote coming up with. These are the people that will be your peers as you continue being a part of a UBA partner firm. So I really encourage cameras on, and this entire academy is meant to be interactive. This is not meant for you all to be quiet, okay? Bring your questions, bring your concerns. This is a safe space. Nothing is being reported, okay? So we're going to start out, like I said, with a bang with Dawn Brinson, who is the CEO of Brinson Benefits. She's been with UBA for quite a while. She is a huge contributor to UBA, and she really can be a role model for all of you. She's bringing us a presentation called Leading from the Middle, and I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to tell you all a little bit more about herself. Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to be sure, Andrea, do we have 45 minutes, an hour? How much time?
We have an hour.
Okay, perfect. I'll leave time for questions at the end. It's just nice to see all of your faces this morning. It would be better if we could all get on some sort of free jet service and be in a room together, but this is the next best thing. And it's exciting for me to see all of your faces this morning. A brief background on me, come from a highly credentialed background. So I just want to share it with you. I dropped out of college. My dad sent me to secretarial school thinking that would be a really good idea. And it was, turns out. In the 80s, unemployment was pretty high, and I went to one of those fancy job placement agencies where the employee pays the fee to get a job, not the employer, and landed a job as a secretary in the underwriting department of a health insurance company in Fort Worth, Texas. So that's my very special beginning in this business. So seeing that I didn't have a college degree, that credential was missing from my repertoire, I decided I better stick it out with this company for at least 4 years to try and have an equivalent. And it would turn out that the lady who hired me, named Diane, is still a very close friend even today. And we've had a little turnabout because she was my mentor for the first 5 years of my career. And she now works at Brinson Benefits as a director within our agency. So when they say, I guess, never burn a bridge, we really mean it. I'm excited about your career path and what you're doing here because I just feel like you have more power than you probably realize. And I hope that today, the time that I have with you is to give you that sense of it, the influence you can have within your agency and what what your potential is. And I will be the first to say that if a secretary in Fort Worth, Texas can own an employee benefits agency and grow it, so can you. You can do all of the things that I've done. There's no special credential except really being committed to what you do and understanding that you have the ability right now today to lead from within your agency, no matter what your seat and no matter how long you've been there. So that's what's exciting for me. I'm going to share screen and get rolling on my slides, but I welcome questions in the chat. If Stephanie, you or Andrea could manage chat. If there is a question, I'd like to answer it as they come in. I'll be mindful of my time. I've got my a giant clock here in front of me. But I do believe even with the content I have for you today, we will have plenty of time for questions. And I also will share a few examples of things that have helped us in our business. So sharing screen now. You should all be able to see. And I want to test one more thing. I use a laser pointer. Everybody sees my little red laser pointer all together. All right, perfect. As I mentioned, I've really tried to put something together for all of you, regardless of whether you're brand new as an account manager or you're tenured and you've been in the seat for a very long time. So no matter your level of expertise, hopefully there's something you can take away from this. Now, I also want to say I love this red and gold design color concept, but then I realized that my footers still say fall conference. I freshen up my content every time, but I happen to love the color scheme. So you get my fall slides anyway. So today we're going to cover agency structure. There are all different types of agencies out there. I'm going to focus obviously on what we all do, which is the arena of employee benefits, but I acknowledge that many of you will have a property and casualty or a wealth management aspect of your agency, but we're going to focus on the employee benefit agency structure. We're going to talk about value drivers today, and I mean agency value drivers. We'll talk about the importance of retention, which we all know is probably your number one thing. And some 2023 trends that we're watching and have been watching. You know, there's always this question, who's correct? Who's right? Is the customer always right? And I think this is a particularly challenging question in employee benefits because we have such a complex business that we represent. So I want to talk about that. We'll talk about what I think priority one should be for you as you embark upon the remainder of this conference or this academy and beyond, and then the rewards of doing all of this. I love this quote from John Maxwell. He said, leadership is a choice you make rather than a place you sit. And I think all too often we assess that our title is what dictates who we are in our role in the agency we're with. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I hope you really get the sense of what I'm talking about as we progress. So I want to begin with how your agency is structured. And I want to introduce you to two ways that one of two ways that agencies are structured. I first want to talk about the law firm model. There will be a good percentage of you who work in what I refer to, this is not an industry term, this is just Dawn's way of describing an agency. And many of you will work within a law firm model agency. As you can see, what I've really drawn out here is that there will be an agency owner or owners, and then there will be producers. And those salespeople may be partners of the agency, or they may not be at this point. But when you see something structured like this, you tend to see a dedicated account management team to one or two producers. Sometimes these will be arranged into pods. So you'll oftentimes have a dedicated account manager, a dedicated analyst, and maybe a dedicated advocate. And each producer will have their own designated team. So that really describes the law firm model. Another common model is the manufacturing model. In this particular agency structure, you'll still have your agency owner, quite likely also a producer, and then you'll have teams of people organized into sales with all producers, possibly reporting to a sales leader or a vice president of sales. Then you'll have client services. And oftentimes in client services, you'll have account management organized by size of client that you're serving. From, as an example, one person may be handling the micro business, and then mid, and then large market. And these divisions may be slightly different for you. Our team at Brinson tends to have a field team assigned if it's 26 or more employees, and then in-house account management if it's 2 to 25. But it could be different for you. You could have divisions like 2 to 9 employees. I've seen that, or 2 to 15. And then separately, you may have an advocacy department. Some of you may call this a call center. We call ours patient advocacy and not a call center. And we try to be anything but a call center in our description of our advocates. And they may be also structured according to size of account or not. And then in this particular manufacturing model, a lot of times you'll see shared services. So these are things that your clients may optionally plug into, such as, well, analytics would be for everyone. Everyone needs a quoting process. Everyone needs to analyze their options each year, and the analytics department may be responsible for that. In our agency, we separate account management from analytics, but many of you will be serving in a dual role, especially in a law firm model agency. Analytics, the RFP process, and the account management process are all one position. And so many of you will be wearing dual hats. You will be both, in Excel, writing formulas and analyzing things, and simultaneously you'll be relational with that client. In some other agencies, you'll find that separated. Another shared service might be benefits technology, something like Employee Navigator or other. There are so many tools out there, and you may even have shared services with compliance and many other things that could be in this list of shared services, but these are some great examples. So there are pros and cons to each. There's no one right way to structure the agency. A lot will depend on the leaders of your agency, how focused on employee benefits they may be. But my goal here today is not to say which one you should be, but to describe some of the observations I have with each type. So in terms of hiring account managers, a lot of times in the law firm structure, as I mentioned, you'll be in kind of a dual role. You'll be handling not only the client-facing day-to-day service responsibilities, open enrollment meetings, things of that nature, but you quite likely will also be the analyst who is doing the request for proposal to the carriers. You'll be responsible for getting those quotes back and putting them into some sort of an exhibit, likely in Excel, that can then be shared and presented to the client. In the manufacturing structure, you may start to see a more specialized team and more of a willingness to train from the ground up in the area of analytics, or to have junior levels where you can progress and grow along the way. In terms of working with producers, in the law firm structure, you're usually assigned just to one or two versus working with multiple or all. And who's the boss? Now, we can all debate who should be the boss, who is the boss, and who in the future will be the boss within your agency if you take to heart what I want to empower you with today. But oftentimes in a law firm structure, you see this like a mini agency within a bigger agency. It's producer led. And then in the manufacturing model, you'll usually have operational people, even player coach people. So it'll be like a manager over the account management team. In terms of processes and deliverables, Sometimes in a law firm model or structure, we'll see that one producer may want things one way, while another producer wants things customized another way. One of the advantages here is you get to know one producer, one salesperson, or two salespeople, and you get sort of some economies of scale because you're working with the same people all the time. Over here in the manufacturing model, it can be a little bit more challenging in some ways, but you're really going for uniform processes and procedures that can be followed by all. And in the case of Brinson Benefits, we have evolved to a manufacturing structure. And that means that our account management team is working with every single producer in our organization. And it makes it really more imperative to follow and have documented processes that we all adhere to. You know, in every organization, I don't care if it's this industry or otherwise, we have personalities to contend with. We know that by just natural wiring, the combination of nature and nurture, we have varying personalities. Certain personalities tend to migrate towards sales positions. Some others migrate towards retention and account management. But from time to time, we'll see that we change seats. I've done both roles. I came up through an insurance company background, as I mentioned earlier, but my first step into really getting a taste and a desire to remain in this industry came from my account management experience and the desire I really had to work with clients year after year. So here you may be limited to the number of people you're working with, and over here you work with all. And I've already mentioned, if you're in the manufacturing structure, you've got to really lean towards documented processes that we have a commitment to be followed by all. I would say that it's important in both cases, law firm structure or manufacturing, but must have in the manufacturing model. And then scalability. We all know that our sales teams from time to time will get into a year of a slump where they're not writing as much business as other years. Sometimes this law firm structure can be challenging if you have salespeople who are in that dip because you're really tied to them and their performance really dictates the size of the book of business you're managing. Over here, scalability tends to be more of an unlimited basis because of just the way the manufacturing structure works. So there's not a right or wrong in terms of the structure. It's just really important for you to know which type of agency you're working in so that you know your advantages and disadvantages. In terms of driving agency value, there's really only 3 things, in my opinion, that we must do well. And it sounds really painfully simple, but really hard to get all 3 things on a high level all at once. So these are the 3. We have to have sales effectiveness. We have to have people coming in committed to producing new sales. We have to drive client retention and growth. And we have to be a great place to work, which speaks to that softness of our culture, that squishy stuff that's really sometimes challenging to get our arms around, but equally as important. So think of these as sort of spinning plates in the air. You know, at one point in time or another, there's something not going quite as well as any of us would like it to. We may be retaining our business well, but not selling as much as we want. We may be selling a whole lot, but not retaining as well. We may not always be every second of the day a great place to work, and we need to turn our attention inward to work on our cultures. And so those 3 things really, in my mind, are the timeless must-haves going at all times. When one of these metrics is off, then we have challenges. Obviously, when the metric of great place to work is off, we have attrition of our team members. When we're not as competitive in the workplace, when our retention's off, those create new problems. So these are the three things that we must do. And by the way, I think these slides are available to you. So, you know, we'll send these out to everyone. So in terms of sales effectiveness, then I know that you're not responsible for this. You're not in charge of sales effectiveness for your agency, but you have a huge influence over this. And I want to point out your part or how you can or could contribute to this. As an account manager, I want to give you some perspective on what a typical salesperson within the employee benefits space is going to need time for. So a typical production expectation for a salesperson is $100,000 per year of new revenue. I've heard numbers around 150,000 of annualized production per year. I will be the first to tell you, we would all like for every single salesperson on our team to hit 150. It hardly ever happens. And then 40% of the salesperson's time should be dedicated to prospecting and new sales activities. That means 60% of their time, if they have a large book of business, is dedicated to current clients. Now, I say all of this, and then I want you to also know that some of your agencies may have a sell it and pass it off structure, where the salesperson doesn't stay involved. That's not right or wrong, but I am describing the vast majority of agencies that I'm familiar with within UBA. Those salespeople tend to stay involved. And this assumption is operating on that. Now, these percentages should be reversed for a new producer, where they should be spending 60% of their time prospecting, going after new sales, 40% of their time maybe managing or learning to manage internal processes and training. So the ways that I find account managers can hinder prospecting time is really these two ways: either not taking the lead on day-to-day service issues, or not driving service processes in timelines. Now, I'm going to say I am familiar with a lot of UBA firms, and one of the things that is the biggest transformation for every firm is to empower our account management teams to drive process. You're going to hear me talk about this over and over, because the key to your freedom and your joy and everything you want in your career is going to come from taking the lead and driving processes within your agency. So we're going to have a little fun here talking about salespeople for a minute, and then hopefully you'll be chuckling as you think of your own sales team or salespeople. And I mean no offense to them. I am a salesperson, and I'll start with their strengths before I move to our weaknesses. I consider myself a salesperson for sure. You know who they are. They can be very charismatic, good relationship builders. They have big personalities oftentimes. They usually are intuitive. They know what is needed in order to win new business, or they can read a group. Natural born leaders, they can also be quite creative. Sometimes you'll hear creativity in interesting ways, I bet, if you're in the field with your salesperson. They can be highly social. They're great risk takers. I put $40,000 of my life savings on the line to start Brinson Benefits 27 years ago, and it worked out. But we are risk takers regardless, and we love to win. We absolutely love to win at almost anything. That being said, these are amazing strengths, and as you might imagine, any strength can also become a weakness. So How many of you have ever noticed that a salesperson can be a little bit of an over-promiser? Like, you've probably even heard of services your agency's never done when you're in the field with a producer. I know one of my producers once told a client that I invented something like this little phone holder gadget. I was like, what? What are you saying? They may struggle with listening. And I feel like this is where you're such a powerful team member in the field with your producer. They're a lot of times great at making promises, but they're not always capable of delivering on those promises. They may not slow down enough to lift others up, including you, a member of their team. They may just be going at Mach speed. Too many ideas, possibly not enough filter, right? I personally have created a system for myself. If you're wired a little bit more like a producer, you may need to use my system. I have a lot of ideas and I have a parking lot. And those ideas need to go in the parking lot until they reemerge at least 3 times in a unique need before I can act on them. Otherwise, I will drive people crazy with all these fantastic ideas that nobody can implement. So we have to make sure we have the filter. Mine is a parking lot. You know, producers, sometimes it's hard to sit still. They may also inflict unrealistic expectations on you or others within the agency. And also, they're emotional creatures. So when they didn't get a deal they thought they would get, sometimes there's emotion about that and recovery is needed. Or even sometimes when they lose a client, they'll have emotion about that because they didn't see it coming. Sometimes we refer to that producer weakness as happy ears. They only really want to hear the good news, not necessarily always being grounded in reality. So now I want to mention these weaknesses again, not to give them a double whammy, but to show how your strengths, in my opinion, complement and help shore up the weaknesses or the challenges of a producer team. In terms of overpromising, I find that most account managers are more realistic about the expectations. And so I want you to feel that you could take control over setting expectations with the client. Sometimes to circle back with a client and affirm what your agency can or cannot do so your client doesn't become disappointed. You tend to be really good listeners and excellent documenters of the conversation or the meeting. So the rest of the team has a chance to actually meet the expectations of a client. You're able to deliver a consistent experience. You tend to be great encouragers. Execution is your strength. That's where you have a chance to shine. You tend to be more patient and diligent, leaning in to a complex onboarding or a complex service requirement or delivery for your client. But you also have challenges, and you may inflict unrealistic expectations on yourself as opposed to others. You may be your harshest critic within your agency, hardest on yourself. And then you have a tendency, in my mind, as account managers, I notice that you tend to persevere in the work through the pain of loss of a customer. You keep going. You keep adhering to best practices. You may have emotion about it, but in some cases, I see that account managers handle things better. So now I want to tackle a little bit about client retention, and notice how I've crossed through this word satisfaction. And that is because study after study of defecting clients done nationally with the Gallup people, with all the different studies ever done, has proven that 90% of clients who left reported themselves as being satisfied or very satisfied with the business they left. So client satisfaction is not enough today to drive retention. And so as you're thinking, wow, I don't know what happened. They gave me a high rating. They went to lunch with me and they liked me. I don't know how I lost this client. Well, it's because the science all supports this notion that satisfied clients leave. And in fact, they report themselves as being satisfied or even very satisfied with the very company they just left. And so if the magic is not creating just satisfied clients, then what do we need to be doing inside of our businesses to drive retention? Well, that's a great question, and maybe one of the greatest puzzles for all of us to figure out. So I love what Chick-fil-A, David Former, VP of Chick-fil-A, said. He says the thing that drives client retention, I think we can all, I'm not a huge fan necessarily of the chicken at Chick-fil-A, but I think we can all appreciate that their brand gets client retention better than almost any restaurant in it or business in its category. So he said this, I love what he said, you're balanced on pit crew efficiency, but where you feel like you just got hugged in the process. I thought, gosh, that speaks to so much of what I think we as account managers are trying to always balance. I mean, half of your brain is in the analytics and the knowledge and the technical aspects of this business and this industry, which is complex. And the other half is focused on being friendly and learning everybody's kids' names and pets' names and all of the good stuff. And it's really hard to be both. That is just using both sides of your brain. And I just love how he described that pit crew efficiency and hugging all in one. So what I think he means by that is really the sum total of the customer experience. And it speaks to one side of our brain needing to be really committed to strength of our processes, having ironclad processes that are really reliable, having strong, powerful procedures, adhering to timelines, and examining what can be improved for ourselves at all times. One thing that's serving us well in this particular season, and we've gone through seasons where we've added services in an attempt to improve a customer experience. And now, in the last 12 to 18 months, we've started asking ourselves a different question, which is, what should we stop doing? We can't just keep on adding and adding and adding all the time. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what does our customer not value that we are possibly doing, that we could stop doing and either replace with something else or just do away with in general? So on the side of pit crew efficiency, I think having very strong documented processes is the key. On the side of feeling like you're hugged, that client feeling like they're being hugged in the process, is communication. I have a belief that I've shared with our account managers and our team members, and that is, I don't think our clients know what you do for them. They think it's easy. They think what you do is easy. And you know why? I've asked because we have people who are account execs on our team who were previous clients of ours. We have one of them in particular. And she said, Dawn, I thought, you made it look so easy. We would open up the presentation book and we would go through the plan options and there'd be the menu in the back. She said, I had no idea what went into the creation of that executive summary so that we could make a decision inside of an hour. She had no idea the hours that were dedicated to our processes. And so I'm asking the question, how can we communicate better with our clients to enhance the appreciation they have for the work you are doing? Not just to act as their buyer. You're literally putting on the buyer's hat before it gets to them to try and help them identify what is the best course of action. And then when you get in front of that client, you have to let those decisions unfold for them. You don't get to just walk in and go, hey, I know what you ought to do. This is it. Do that. They have to buy into every bit of that presentation you're making to them. So make sure that you're telling your client what you're doing to enhance the appreciation they have for the hours invested. In fact, I wonder sometimes if we shouldn't share the number of hours that has gone into a single renewal evaluation, RFP process, discussions. Some of your agencies are probably documenting that in a CRM system. I wonder if it's a part of your stewardship report, or could be a part of your stewardship report. So if customer satisfaction isn't the thing, then what is? And what we know is that switching costs are the things that can help you with your client retention strategies. We've got to make it hard for our clients to leave us because they think they can get what you do anywhere else in town. And your competitors are saying that about you. So here are just some examples of some ideas. You probably could come up with some great ideas yourself, but examples in other businesses of switching costs. Well, for example, points programs. You know what? I only fly American Airlines, but it's frankly not because I think American Airlines has the best service. And there are times they frustrate me. Their prices are a little bit higher than I like. But they do fly almost everywhere I want to go. But what really keeps me stuck to them is their points programs. I have almost 1 million points. So I'm a points hoarder. And that's what keeps me loyal to them. Even when their brand lets me down, I'm still loyal. Kentucky Fried Chicken, Coca-Cola, they all create switching costs around a secret recipe. What are examples of secret recipes that you could create or could be branding within your agency? Ease of access or variety of products. This is it for doctor's offices. They possess all my records. How hard is it for me to go get my records transferred to another place, right? Maybe I'm a membership card holder like Costco or Sam's. I pay annually, or Amazon. Or an example of a switching cost is when you purchase multiple things from them. This is great for your agencies who are property and casualty and wealth management and employee benefits. You get to possibly hit the trifecta. Now, I will say there are agencies out there who should be able to cross-sell more effectively than they do. And I was across the table from I know Gallagher's not attending this, so I'll go ahead and share. It was Gallagher. And I asked the question, hey, what percent of your business is also property and casualty and employee benefits? So to what extent are you cross-selling? He said, it is disappointingly low, 15% or less. That blew me away. Hearing that statistic. I don't know if that's true in every office, but I do think that's a startlingly low statistic. So how can your agency create some switching costs? I've got a few ideas that could help. One, you possess their claims records and their history. That's an example of one thing. They have to ask you for it if they want to consider moving. Extensive menu of proprietary offerings. This is something that Brinson has spent quite a bit of time working on. And by the way, there are connections to you within UBA to gain access to some of these proprietary services that cannot just be taken over on agent of record if you specify that restriction. So COBRA administration, ACA reporting, 120, section 125 admin, that's flexible spending accounts, health savings accounts, patient advocacy. One of our biggest brands around patient advocacy is called the Purple Card. And it is a powerful differentiator, and it's proprietary to us. Nobody gets their hands on it. Nobody keeps it if they leave Brinson. Benefits technology that you control, or any special reporting or reports that you've created that the client has come to appreciate and rely upon. For those of you who work with a lot of self-funded employers, I would strongly encourage you to develop your own proprietary self-funded reporting package so that you could have something really special for those clients. Within UBA, we have proprietary telemedicine deals with unique contracts. Those are examples of things that a client would have to lose should they choose to move on without you. You may help clients purchase what we call at Brinson off the grid. That would be something like maybe a captive. We have captive strategies within UBA, or possibly even billing clients annually in advance. We do this for almost every small dollar service so that we're not continually chasing invoices. And then also something as simple as just having a professional services agreement with your client. I know a lot of us have been get hired and fired by broker of record letter. But in addition to that, you can also have a professional services agreement that requires a certain amount of notice for termination and really makes the client have to evaluate everything you're doing before they quickly decide to leave you. So just segue to trends and challenges that I see as it relates to the client relationship. The biggest thing that we've obviously seen is just the sheer number of power changes, position changes within our client relationships. So we have baby boomers retiring at record rates. We have business owners, our clients are selling in larger numbers to private equity. And that creates a risk for us because we may see control of that client relationship move even to another state. A lot of times the private equity companies, the investors that are buying this business are now headquartered in a completely different market and are going to drive relationships out of your geographic area. We have the Great Resignation. We've seen the value on human resources positions go up exponentially, higher salaries in the field of HR, and your HR contacts are shifting jobs more frequently to better their position, but that creates a vulnerability. We see more people hiding and not answering their telephones in a work from home environment. This is hard on your sales team. All kinds of different work methodologies. Seeing people go to a hybrid work environment. We have different kinds of competitors. For many years, we didn't see much from the PEO space, didn't lose very much to PEOs, but now employers are considering more about that. So all of these types of things are contributing toward changes in our marketplace and causing us to have to think uniquely about how we respond to new customer methods or needs. So we've got to find out ways to build trust quickly and effectively. I've got some ideas around this. And I mean, these are just a few. Making sure that you're being a part of an important welcome message. This gives you a chance not only to follow the person who's departing, the HR manager, the CFO, whoever it is, but also welcome the new person. We just keep on hand a bunch of cheap sunglasses. I mean, these are $2 a piece. We have a card that says the future looks bright, and we can write a personal note and welcome the departing person, say goodbyes to that departing person and say, we're still here for you. You're an important part of a relationship we've forged. We want to stay in touch. And then the new person coming in, we get to welcome them with just, you know, a token of something that just is special for them. Doing orientations. I am constantly reminded by our clients how much they do not know about our industry and the gotchas that could really hurt them. We also see our clients scrambling and hiring more entry-level HR directors who don't know benefits. It's a great opportunity for us to get in with them and forge that relationship, but you've got to have extra time and processes in place to onboard them effectively and to build that relationship and that trust as quickly as possible, which is what Build Trust Quickly stands for, BTQ. Be willing to ask uncomfortable questions. A lot of the time, the new person coming in has already worked with a broker before. And you want to find out how comfortable they are with that former relationship, what they liked, what they didn't. You know, for us, we follow a script that says we want to not presume that how we worked with your predecessor is how we should be working with you. So we want to relearn, we want to rediscover what's going to be your priority for us in a future relationship, because you're very important to us. Make no presumptions. Conduct a rediscovery. Write a new service plan to accommodate the new power. Up the frequency of your interactions through these power changes. And I think ideally what we're trying to figure out and create the space for is no less than monthly proactive outreaches, education, staying in touch. You all may have different schedules for yourself. We build trust kind of in a visual way. One of the themes last year was about building trust in one of our meetings, and we gave each one of our people one of these jars full of marbles. And I want you to imagine that that's really the way trust is built. It's built over small interactions over time with our clients, not one big show. It's small things, one little thing at a time. So think of it like putting marbles in a jar, building that trust, one small interaction at a time. So now I want to I realize we're coming to our last few minutes together, and I want to emphasize this point that clients think that they have been experts in purchasing employee benefits for whatever amount of time they've been doing it. And most of the time I find that they may not be as expert as they think they are. So it's either going to be your way or their way. And what I oftentimes find is that their way, the client's way of purchasing, is not proactive. It does not manage timelines well. And it actually hurts them to purchase employee benefits like a commodity. A lot of times we'll witness a client who's purchasing their employee benefit programs just like they might purchase office supplies from the Office Depot. But that is not what this is. This is a risk-based purchase. And so your way, your proactive way of guiding them through a purchasing process that is better is what we're going for here. So buying like a commodity is one of the things we see that doesn't work well. How many of your clients haven't gotten yet? They participate in this weird 3-broker waltz, is what we call it. It's where they think calling up 3 brokers and getting their census data to 3 brokers is actually going to get them the best price. We all know the entire market is confused by this. And in many cases, the carriers have an automatic decline. How can you educate your client on the likelihood of decline when they purchase this with or try to purchase through 3 brokers? Let me pose this question for you to use. If you got called up by the IRS because you're now being audited, would you hire 3 CPAs to represent you to the IRS? I hope not, because I think that would confuse the IRS. If you were on the stand, in a trial for your life, would you hire 3 separate attorneys to represent you to the jury? Or do you think the jury would be confused by that? This is the same idea. I want you to be emphasizing with your clients that the 3-broker waltz actually hurts them, doesn't help them. Not starting the renewal process early enough is a huge, huge problem that the client doesn't understand. And then lastly, not understanding all these unique components that drive price. It's not just about your census. How many employers have said to you, I feel like if we just get to be in a bigger group, that this will not be so painful? Well, let me impart some truth with you. A big sick group is not cheaper to insure than a small sick group. That's the truth. But your client, your buyer, is not thinking clearly about this topic. So the client's way is not often the best way. That's just the bottom line fact of it. And so you're there to be their coach, to help educate them on the mistakes they may have made in the past. So as we come around to the final stretch here, establishing your pit crew efficiency, I think this is startling. An average driver, I'm not sure I could do this, could change a tire in 15 to 20 minutes. But in NASCAR, all 4 tires get changed by the team in less than 20 seconds. That's what we mean by pit crew efficiency. We have got to drive better processes, documenting, creating process flows, creating process maps for ourselves, making sure that our way is in fact the best way for your clients to buy from you. You have the option, either you are going to be a victim to the client's way, or even your producer's way, or you are going to take charge and you are going to lead from the middle to create these processes that you intend to follow. And I'm not going to go through each of these lines. You'll have these in your slides, but it's just a matter of making sure the client knows who's responsible for what. Your team knows who's responsible, who's involved, and all along the way of your client experience. So your number one priority in my mind as an account manager, an account executive, whatever your title is to drive the client timelines. This is what will give you the amount of freedom and control that you want. To do that, we're going to spend a lot of time telling clients what we're going to do, showing them what we're going to do, getting them to agree that that's a good plan, reminding them after the fact of what you did. One thing that we implemented this year that was really fun, we created a survival gift, a You Survived renewal season gift for our clients to celebrate with them together. And it's a personal gift, a small token to know that, hey, this is stressful. We know it's stressful for you and you survived it and we did it together. Reminding our clients of why we do things this way, and then proving to them that our way is really best. So now let's talk lastly about rewards. What's in it for you as an account manager? What am I hoping that you value about your role within the agency? Here's what I think. I think when you drive timelines, when you drive your client's experience, you're the boss of it. You're not waiting for a producer to make the appointment. You're driving the appointments, you're driving all of it. You will earn the confidence, trust, and respect of your team without question. This is probably the number one thing. You'll cultivate a lot of marbles in your trust jar. You'll have improved client relationships and retention to show for it. You personally will have a better quality of life when you are driving the processes and the timelines. We start pre-renewal strategy 5 to 6 months in advance of the client's renewal date. Why do we do that? Well, it's better for the client because they don't find themselves back against the wall having to take a double-digit renewal that they shouldn't have to take. But also for your quality of life, if you want to have a decent Thanksgiving and a decent Christmas or holiday, you're gonna have to drive process from your position. Because I'm gonna tell you, it's either gonna be your way or it's gonna be their way. And I strongly believe the highest quality of life will come from you doing it your way and driving your agency's success in managing client experiences and renewals. That will mean you will have the ability to take time off. Maybe not a lot of time around Thanksgiving or the Christmas holidays, but hopefully sometime thereafter. You'll earn your way through this confidence and trust to work with larger clients and more clients. And you should see that as an advantage because ultimately that leads to higher income. More authority and autonomy in your role is the great advantage here. So I'm not saying that all of you will continue to stay as account managers in employee benefits, but I think if you consider the points that I've made for you today, you have a tremendous opportunity to lead your agency and to lead from the middle, regardless of your title and your years of experience. If you were coming into my agency brand new, I would be looking for you to find ways to innovate, to create, to lead, to drive. And as soon as I would see that, I would begin to give you more responsibility, more money, more autonomy. I'm looking for those rock stars in our industry. And I have a feeling you're here investing in this so that you can be that kind of rock star to the agency you're within. With that, I'll hand it over. I appreciate everything that UBA is doing to further career advancement for our account managers.
Dawn, I cannot thank you enough. That was inspiring in every way. That was just amazing. And I hope that all the attendees feel the same way. Talk about action items. You can go out there today and start implementing some of these ideas. Just wonderful. I can't thank you enough. It doesn't look like we have questions. We have some thank yous from the audience in the chat box.
Okay, great.
So I will let Dawn get back to her day, and the rest of us, we're going to take a 5-minute break while we prepare the next speaker.
Okay.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second installation of Account Manager Academy. Today, we're going to hear from Susan Farver, who manages the compliance within employee benefits. I'm sorry, what's the last word in your employee benefits?
International.
Thank you. Susan is a tremendous contributor to UBA. She sits on committees and on collaboration groups and is always very willing to jump in on anything compliance. So as account managers, I'm sure you've already seen that you need to have an understanding of compliance basics. It is expected from your clients that you will have this understanding. And so Susan is going to basically review everything you need to know. Susan, would you tell the group a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So hello and welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you all jumping in on this. And I have some tough shoes to follow. Dawn was a great presenter, so I hope that I can meet everyone's expectations this afternoon. I have been in the business since 2000. I started out actually as a customer service representative and became a client service manager, and then an account coordinator, and then an account manager. During 2008, when the crisis hit, the economic crisis, and we started to see changes in benefits, I got heavily involved in compliance for health plans. At that point, I started writing HR admin manuals for training for basic compliance, how to handle your benefits, how to handle the compliance side of it. And then I started educating a lot of the HR and training account managers on benefit compliance for employers. And it has taken off from there. I am one of those little nerds that likes to read about compliance and study it. So it's kind of like a hobby of mine. I enjoy what I do very much. And it's very rewarding to be able to help clients through a compliance crisis, or support my producers and owners in the compliance realm, or work as an advocate for maybe their key employees within a company on sensitive issues. So that's a little bit about me. Prior to coming to the insurance industry, I actually worked for Harley-Davidson in a very unique situation. I was in their apparel department as a key contact for very special clients like Jay Leno and Peter Fonda for their Harley apparel. So it was really a fun job, but I really enjoy what I'm doing now. So here I am. Welcome aboard, everybody. So in my role over the last 23 years, I found there to be such a need for the account managers and account coordinators to really know how to educate their HR. If you empower the HR, help them feel comfortable and confident in administering their benefits, there's a lot more success between the client and the broker and the account managers. So we're going to go ahead and begin with the presentation. Our agenda here is going to be a high-level overview. We're going to evaluate, educate. We're going to go over processes, review and approve for clients, and finalize their documents. So to succeed in business, you need to stand out. And I have been with 2.5 brokers, I say, because the company I work for now actually had a split, and part of them went to NFP, and part of them stayed as an independent firm. So the success I've seen out of 3 brokers in 20 years, I've stayed a long time, has to be with the relationships that we build with them. As Dawn had relayed to earlier, your processes can hold you accountable to so many, but also that relationship can really bond you, and the success and the confidence that you can help those HRs and directors have in you as a company, and an account manager and account coordinators. So by building this strong relationship can make you almost invaluable to any client. So we're going to give you a high-level overview of how your client's benefit compliance can add to that relationship. We're going to evaluate and educate to start with. So the way to get started is to quit talking about it and start doing. Walt Disney had said that, and I really believe in that as well. I put bullet points or notes down, and then I start taking action on what I want to do or where I think things need to go. So teamwork makes the dream work, but that's only when you're all working together. You're going to need someone that's going to provide compliance education to your account managers and account coordinators. And then those account coordinators and account managers are going to be able to educate that client and bring a value to them. Now, when we're talking references to education, there's a lot of resources out there. And one of them you're taking right now by doing the UBA compliance and account management course. It's going to throw you in all these different areas. I also like to use Xywave and HR services resource portals, CXCs, and compliance dashboard. Those are all amazing tools that you can tap into to learn, to research, and to look into when you have compliance concerns or questions. And then we highly recommend tapping into the compliance at ubabenefits.com. I contact them frequently. If I do not know an answer, I never ever answer a question unless I'm 100% confident that I know what I'm doing. I also always like to have a reference point, whether it's section 125, IRS code this or that. So if I don't have the facts and don't have the resources to provide to the client, I'm not going to respond to them. So by providing some of these options like compliance at UBA or Xywave or HR, those are all things that account managers and account coordinators can tap into. Educate your account management team. It all begins at home, and it's going to begin at your home office there. Make sure that you're getting educated, your account coordinators and your team is getting educated so you know the basics on what you need to be reviewing with your clients. Provide the tools, like the support tools that I gave you. Encourage continuing education all the time. Sit in on these webinars and listen to them. Read the news flashes and alerts when they come out. Provide online compliance resources and access the UBA support. So this is all a part of where you can get help. You don't have to be a guru. You don't have to know everything, but it's good to know where to find those answers and resources. So here we go. So we're going to take a look at how do we begin and where do we know. So make a checklist. Sit and take the time to look. What are we going to be looking for and what are we going to be asking that client about? These are the key items that you're going to want to make a list of when you're doing a compliance audit to help your client stay on track. ERISA is going to be one of the most important documents that an employer can have. And there are actually two documents to an ERISA. There's an ERISA SPD wrap, which is a summary plan description document, and then the plan documents themselves, which is the employer portion of that. Then there's also distribution guidance and 5500 filing, which can come along with ERISA if you have an employer group health plan that's 100 or more employees enrolled on the first day of that plan year. So those are important things that an employer needs to be aware of right off the bat. And when you're going through a renewal, your renewal could impact these documents. So every year, whether it's a new client or whether it's going to be a renewal, I get out my checklist of what do we need to look at. And then I go through what the account manager has at renewal. And I go down my checklist here and say, okay, I need to take a look at their ERISA documents. I need to take a look and find out if they're filing 5500. I need to also find out if they need a Section 125 premium-only plan, which is a POP plan, or a cafeteria plan. Section 125, 129, and 105 non-discrimination testing, which must be done once a year, and domestic partner taxation and complications when you're enrolling employees, and how is it going to impact them for contributions and benefits and everything. So in my checklist, I'm also going to keep in mind that I need to be mindful of my ACA compliance, whether it is PCORI fees, 1094 and 1095 filing, calculating affordability, which tends to get everybody stumped sometimes. And now we're throwing in the mix the CAA, which is requiring this RxDC prescription drug reporting, mental health parity, and transparency in coverage. We're also going to have CMS jumping into the mix as well with creditable coverage determination, also notice requirements and disclosure to CMS, as well as all our annual compliance notices, COBRA administration, and yeah, even HIPAA compliance for employers. So these are the main things that an employer, and whether it's an HR director, HR generalist, or coordinator, needs to keep in mind when you go through renewal. So your account manager needs to be aware of it, and you need to be helping your HR team through the process as well. So what do we do when we get the first steps? We know this information needs to be gathered. So we're going to want to do some research. We're going to want to obtain their documents if they have any. We want to look through their current ERISA documents. We want to confirm if they filed in the past, 5500. We also want to confirm if they have Section 125 or 129 plan documents and if they're current. Group contracts, amendments, SBCs, and booklets. These are all going to be important things that you're going to have to deal with at renewal, and then shortly after renewal when you do an audit. Employer eligibility requirements. You're going to want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what they are for each of their plans. Contribution schedules, COBRA administrator, and most importantly, the company details. Is it an S Corp, L Corp, nonprofit? Let's confirm their address hasn't changed, their legal name, EIN number. All of these things are going to be very important to review as soon as you're done with renewal and the group have made these decisions. Client audit. So once the documents and the company information has been gathered, the fun's going to begin. I know you're thinking, well, how can this be fun? It actually is not so bad once you get a checklist together and start going through it. So I've gathered all my documents. I know that my account managers and my producers have sold the plan, and I'm working with my account manager, and we work very closely together with our account managers and our account coordinators. And if they don't get me the stuff, I go to the client and get the stuff myself. But we talk over reviewing the eligibility. Did they change eligibility at renewal? Do you have new hire eligibility waiting periods that are different? Rehire eligibility waiting periods. Dependent coverage, class structure, hours required for benefits, and benefit terminations on each of the policies. These are all really important things to make sure that they're up to date each and every year. If it doesn't get updated yearly and you're not looking at it properly, there could be some very serious regulations and fines and issues in place that will come into play, whether it's a disgruntled employee that leaves the company or you get a DOL audit. So secondly, we're going to want to review and compare the current carrier booklets, contracts, and amendments, as well as the eligibility. You want to confirm consistency across all of your products and your documents. And you may find that your medical, dental, and vision has a eligibility of the first of the month following 30 days, and that it terms at the end of the month. But, oh, wait a minute, now I've got my life and my disability. And those are eligible first of the month following 30 days, but they term the date of termination or the date of a qualifying event. So you want to make sure that all of this documentation is going to be consistently outlined for the employer and the employees in the legal documents that we're going to go through. You're going to want to review the current ERISA SPD wrap, which is your summary plan description, and the plan documents. And you're going to want to make sure that there's Section 125 premium only plan, which allows the employees to take their benefits on a pre-tax basis and really guides the structure for eligibility of when they can term off the plan or enroll in the plan. Make sure all of those have the same eligibility requirements, the same benefits are listed on those documents. And then lastly, don't overlook ACA and COBRA, Section 125 taxation and discrimination testing, and domestic partner coverage, as well as HIPAA and the CAA. So these are all things that you want to make sure match up. And again, the best way to do that is I create an Excel spreadsheet with a template. I quick have a checklist, and I quick write down the eligibilities, the term dates, everything, so that I have a snapshot for that client's listings. In addition to some of those compliance considerations, we have calculating affordability. And this is going to be a huge one when account managers go through renewal, and you're going to be helping those clients make sure their documents are correct and in place and what you're looking for. And when you're setting the structure to calculate the contributions, account managers need to understand that the employers want to categorize employees to help them determine the employee contributions meet affordability threshold. And under ACA, it follows a calendar year. So if you have a plan that is renewing off cycle, they're going to have two different contribution percentages that are going to apply. So to determine affordability for your employees, you're going to want to make sure that they have assigned safe harbor classifications through ACA. And there are 3 classifications that the ACA sets to determine affordability when you're making contribution schedules. The first one is the federal poverty level, which you may see updates on. The federal poverty level was set for 2023 at $13,590. So how do I determine what is the lowest or the highest contribution level my employer can charge their employee only? And they're going to use the federal poverty level to make an affordability calculation on that employee's contribution. They're going to take the federal poverty level of $13,590, and you're going to multiply that by the 9.12%, which was the threshold set by the ACA to determine the calculation, and that's going to come out to $1,239.40. Now you're going to divide that annual by 12 to get your monthly total of $103.28. So if I'm determining my employee's maximum contribution for the month using federal poverty level for 2023, the most I can charge that employee would be $103.28 using that level. Now, let's say we want to use the rate of pay, and everybody thinks that the rate of pay might be the best way to determine affordability. It could be under certain circumstances. The rate of pay should never be used when you have an employee that has a tipped or salaried employee that is relying on tips or commission. You'll want to use a W-2 or federal poverty level. The rate of pay, if you take a look, we have an employee that's making $15 an hour. And under the ACA, it says to use 130 hours. So we're going to take 130 hours and multiply it by the affordability threshold percentage of 9.12. That's going to give us $1,950. So $1,950 multiplied by the 9.12 comes out to $177.84 per month. So look at the difference between the two of using the affordability of the rate of pay versus the federal poverty level. It's increased significantly. So based on your client's needs may determine what kind of threshold they want to use to determine their employee contributions. There's also a salary rate of pay that you can use. And if you take a look, this individual is making $8,000 a month. You want to multiply that by the affordability percentage of 9.12, which comes out to $729.60 per month. So there's significantly a difference. Then you have the form W-2, safe harbor, that you can use. And this is recommended, again, when you have those that are tipped employees or those that are on a commission base. The W-2 you would take from the previous calendar year, or you can estimate the current one. W-2 will be the most challenging to calculate because you're basing it off of an annual total and you're estimating. So if they fall under it, it could challenge the way the contribution was viewed. So it is a challenging way to do it, but it is something that would be required if you have those tipped or restaurant employees. So let's say we have a W-2 that earned $50,000 last year. We're going to multiply it by the 9.12%, which comes out to $45.60. And you're going to divide that by 12 months. So we're taking a look at the affordability here. It's going to be $380 per month. So that is your affordability threshold for those that are using a W-2. When applying a safe harbor, the IRS did state that you don't have to use the same safe harbor for every single employee, that you are allowed to class them out. So you can use salary versus hourly, a specific job classification, employees who work in different states, or employees with or without collective bargaining. You want to make sure that you understand the affordability, because failure for your clients to meet the affordability threshold may leave those employers exposed to severe fines and penalties under the ACA. Always run affordability tests on the employee contributions prior to sending them the contribution schedule, and make sure they understand how the affordability was determined, and so that they can provide the best option for their employees. So it's always good to make sure you do that ahead of time. Additional compliance considerations to take into view when you're doing a renewal and getting ready for open enrollment. A lot of, I want to say, account managers, account coordinators, you're getting the benefit booklets ready, you're getting the renewal ready. Sometimes you forget about the annual compliance notices. So you've got the SBCs, you've got the renewal ready, you're ready to open enrollment, and oh no, I did forget something. Annual compliance notices. They are so important to get those out at open enrollment. During open enrollment, you're going to have to provide notices, but also to some that are newly eligible coming onto the plan during open enrollment and at other times throughout the year. Here's an example of the required notices. Based on the company size, the company funding, and the state they're in, and the company status, you can go through this list. Some of the notices may apply and some may not. We as a company use Xywave, and Xywave has what they call a notice generator. So we can go in and create very specific notice packets for our clients. It's an amazing tool that you can access. So we can pick and choose. We can even get it in Spanish, English, and I believe there's like 16 other languages that we can get this into of the most common. So that at open enrollment, when our account managers and account coordinators have got that benefit guide, SBCs, guess what? Now they've got that annual compliance notice packet as well to go out. And then they also retain that packet for new hires or newly eligible when they come on the plan anytime throughout the year. We've got the Health Insurance Exchange Notice, the new No Surprise Act Notice, ADA, which is the Americans with Disability Act Notice. There's the Notice of Patient Protection, Special Enrollment Rights under HIPAA, Privacy Practices, Women's Cancer Right Act, Mental Health Parity, CHIP, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program, and not all states comply with that. We do provide it to all our clients, whether they reside in a state that does comply with CHIP or not, because they might have dependents or remote workers that are in one of those states. Newborns and mothers' health protection, Medicare creditable and non-creditable coverage notices, GINA, the General COBRA Rights Notice. Now, a lot of employers think, oh, well, I've got that COBRA notice in my annual packet, so I don't need to send out that initial notice. That is not the case. We like to include it in the annual notice packet, but you still need to have a COBRA administrator, and you still need to ensure that that general or initial COBRA notice does go out to the employee and any dependents that enroll in that plan. And there's very specific guidelines that those need to be sent first-class mail. So that notice is just included in our notice packet as a courtesy to remind them that they do have COBRA options. USERA, FMLA based on the group size, grandfathered plan status, Michelle's Law, why is it still included? We have ACA, and under ACA, all group health plans do allow coverage for the dependents up to age 26, so school isn't an issue anymore. But you do have some employers that are 50 and under that do not have to comply with ACA if they are fully insured. Or you might have a grandfathered plan status, so Michelle's law is still out there. Wellness notice if they have a full-blown wellness plan. Distribution can be a challenge. A lot of employers don't know exactly how to distribute these notices. Do we hand them out? Do we email them? What do we do? There are options. They can do U.S. mail, hand delivery, company publications like the internet or intranet. Electronic delivery is the most popular, and it's probably the safest way to deliver them because you can obtain proof of mailing. So regardless of the distribution methods used, an employer should always retain evidence that the notice was being given, include a copy of the notice, the date it was provided, and whom it was provided to. And there's different ways that you can go about doing that. Electronic document distribution is probably the number one, the most important or most common way to deliver it. So employers can post the documents on their designated employer site, their intranet site. Under this method, the employer must ensure that the employees have the ability and can access it at any time, 24/7. But their employees can, their spouse might be able to go on there and take a look. Employers must provide a separate notification when they're getting ready to tell them about where they're posting it. It can be sent via electronic method to notify them. You have to tell them where the document's available, the important information, and you have to spell it out, exactly what's in there and why it's important. And then the right to receive the information by any other acceptable means. So you have to let them know if you need a copy of this in writing, it's available in print and so forth. So wherever it's going to be distributed method, make sure the employer always retains evidence that they've provided the notice, the date that they have, when, where, and how. The next method is electronic delivery through a work email. So documents can be sent, maybe a PDF via email without consent, but only to the employee's work email address. If the work email is specifically for and used by employees on a regular basis, whether it's a part of their activity they get into every day, work responsibilities, as long as they can access that computer, they have access, they can go ahead and get it delivered that way. They have to have an actual receipt of transmission and retain a copy of that. If you fail to have a delivery notice, that can come back to bite the client in the end. The email includes a statement that shows the significant value of that attachment, contains the right to request a paper copy again and at no cost, and the instructions on how to request a copy. The notice consent does not need to contain any identifiable protected health information in it when it goes to the employee's email. The third way is the personal email. A lot of companies might have employees that work nationwide and maybe they don't have a company email, but they have a personal email. If the employee does not have a primary work issued email, and they may elect it with written consent to provide the employer with a personal email address for receipt of certain documents. You need to get a consent form signed by them. It needs to include the type of documents they wish to consent to. The consent has to be informed that they can withdraw that at any time. The procedures for withdrawing consent should be outlined in it. There should also be beneficiaries or other individual addresses for receipt of electronically furnished documents as well. Maybe they have a spouse that's on the plan and she's also supposed to receive documents. So it needs to be clearly stated so that they can clearly understand what they're consenting to. And then the request to obtain a paper version, how it can be furnished and how they need to go about it. And also, if there's any specific hardware or software requirements that might be restricting them, you should provide a sample of what they need to have in order to open up or receive those documents. So it can be a little more complicated due to HIPAA privacy, when you send it to a personal email address. Now that we've gotten open enrollment ready, we've gotten annual compliance notices, we've gathered all the documents. So now we've got everything in our client's file in our office. I always go to creating a compliance checklist for the client. So I just set a sample here. You can create however you feel it's important to do. This was super easy. It's just laying a table down. I outline exactly what I'm going to do. I give the client a requirement like ERISA, and I give them a brief description of what ERISA is about. Then I also put in there the current status. The group moved to a new carrier. And then I give them the option. They need to restate it, and then the option for them to select it or decline it. So this is my checklist I create. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 pages long based on the complexity of that client. I give them section 125. I give them their ERISA, their CAA. I go through all of that. I create my checklist off of all the documents that I sent, and I let them know what they need to do. So my ERISA, my 125, if they didn't have any changes, they don't have to restate it every year. An ERISA document, they don't have to restate a section 125 document every year, only if there are significant changes under the law. So the group changed funding in this case, so I advised them that they did need to restate it, but they declined, saying, oh, I have a payroll vendor that's going to recreate my document for me at no cost. So here's an example of how I do my checklist and what I get ready. And again, I set it in an email. I have a template all ready. I set my checklist in there and I review everything, copy my account manager on it, or my account manager will go and do this, and then they send it to the client. So what happens after I send it? Here's kind of a idea of the steps that we take. So we present the results to the client on the compliance audit via email. And then I offer sometimes to set up a call and review. We review with the client their audit and checklist, and we go through and educate them on everything that's needed. We try to keep it simple so they understand, and generally my calls will last anywhere from 1 to 2 hours, and we'll go through each item on the checklist. We go through the ERISA, Section 125, annual compliance notices, and 5500. Then we go into non-discrimination testing, COBRA administration, and HIPAA to make sure they cover all the areas. And now we've added the CAA for reporting. So we provide the client with some compliance resource options as well when we're going through the call. Maybe they want a white paper on ERISA because they didn't understand it. Why do I need an ERISA SPD, and what is that? So I educate them during the call, and then I provide them with some white papers that help them understand. Or maybe they had their ERISA up to date and they didn't know they had to have a written Section 125 document saying, we take the employee's contributions on a pre-tax basis. So then I provide them with the white papers and send that off to them. At that point, we go through and we complete the regulatory changes in any of the documents that they've selected they want us to move forward with, and we send a draft summary back to the client. That HR department will go through the draft that we've drafted on either updating their ERISA documents, getting ready for their annual compliance notices, and they got that packet and want to review it, make sure that the client's name, EIN, all the information is correct. Once I get an approval from the client signing off saying, yeah, my draft documents look great, everything looks good, we finalize the documents and we send them to the client for distribution. We also provide them with distribution guidance. We go through actions required not only at open enrollment, but throughout the rest of the year for all those new hires that come on or newly eligible employees. And we can set up follow-up calls if they need any assistance with those final distribution steps, or when they get maybe a new hire group coming on with additional employees that they couldn't remember what to do. So in summary, what we've done is educate yourself and your team members, for the account coordinators and account managers. Educate yourself first. Make sure you have this checklist. Make sure you understand what your client needs to have in place. Audit your clients' plans, documents, and compliance policies. And educate your clients. Provide them with guidance, white papers, webinars, anything you can throughout the year. And provide them with options also like XyWave or CXD or compliance dashboard. Review the plan documents, contribution schedules, any regulatory changes that took place during the year and at renewal. And always, always, always respond with 100% accuracy and confidence. So whenever you're in doubt, even when I'm not in doubt, because I'm not an attorney, I'm a compliance coordinator, I always go to the experts and ask them to confirm or clarify what I'm looking into. And then I provide them with the references and the details of where I got my information from. And we place a disclaimer at the bottom of our emails, all our white papers and documents, and all our correspondence. So this is where I'm at. I know it's kind of a high-level overview. Compliance is complicated and there's a lot to it. But this just gives you a summary of what you need to look for at renewal or if you have a new client coming in. Make sure their documents are in place. Make sure everything is consistent. Provide yourself and your clients with education to build that relationship so that they can count on you to know their plan is running successful. And I find when we educate our HR departments, they feel so empowered and so grateful. The emails we get back on, oh my gosh, thank you so much for going through that with me. I didn't know we had to do that. Or I didn't know we had to do this. The references and the referrals come in. They keep your clients happy. They can count on you when you know that your account coordinators and your account managers are going out there and giving them a brief summary of what they need to be accountable for. Even if you're not a compliance expert, you can get a compliance checklist and help get them started on that road. All righty. I know I'm a little ahead of schedule.
That's okay, Susan. We have a question. In addition to this PowerPoint, are we able to get a copy of your spreadsheet checklist along with your email template you send to clients?
It's something that I can check with. I know that they don't want to release proprietary information, but I can probably create something similar as an example to put that together and post out there for our account managers, a checklist and a email.
Thank you.
I'll make a note of that.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to add a couple of things. So there was a time where compliance was not really a word that was brought up with account management. That time is so far gone in the past. Almost every conversation that you're going to have with your account manager, with your clients, will have some aspect of compliance baked into it. And you may not even recognize it as such, and they may not recognize it as such, but it's there. So it's really important that you train yourself to take an attitude towards compliance of embracing rather than kind of shying away. None of this is more than you can handle, I promise you. These are the basics. And like I said before, these are the type of things that you are going to be expected to know. Having said that, for those of you just starting out, talk to your manager. You probably have processes and systems in place within your agency, so you don't have to feel like you are creating any of this from scratch. So ask around. Your manager may even be able to pair you up with a senior account manager or a compliance professional within your organization that can kind of mentor you through some of these items. I want to take a couple of minutes and bring you all onto the UBA compliance webpage. Susan, are you able to stop sharing? Because I think I need to take the share in order to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see. Okay. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is the compliance page of the community website. So if any of you have not yet been on here, either ask your manager about it, or you can email support@ubabenefits.com, and we'll help you get access. So one of the many things on the UBA community is this compliance page. And I want you to get comfortable with it because it has a lot of resources that will benefit you as you grow your role. So I'm going to start with Compliance Help Desk. So Susan referred to this earlier. As a UBA partner firm, you have access to a compliance help desk that is manned by EB attorneys. So any type of compliance question other than these things that are out of scope, anything other than these, all you need to do is email compliance@ubabenefits.com. Your question will be received, reviewed, and answered by an EB attorney. The response time is excellent. I think a few months it was as low as 18 minutes. That doesn't mean every question is going to be answered that quickly, but the point is they're very, very fast, and they are considered a trusted and respected resource within UBA. So this is yours for using. Okay, so make this a regular stop. Then we
Andrea,
also
can I jump
have,
in quick?
sure, please do.
This is a really good tip for all you account managers out there. We set a general folder in our main drive that says UBA compliance responses, and every response we get throughout the year goes in there. And then account managers can tap into that and say, oh, he answered that one and this one and this one. It's a great resource to keep that in a main drive in a folder where everybody can access that. Then you're not always asking the same question over again, but it's also at your fingertips so that you can access that.
Yep, and on the road, you know, you don't have to be sitting in front of your desk to use that email. So if you're in, you're in front of a client and a question comes up, you can say, I don't have an answer, but if you give me a second, I'm going to go ahead and email our compliance attorney, and I'll share the answer with you once I hear back. Talk about instantaneous customer service. Okay, so compliance advisors. So a compliance advisor for within UBA is a document that is written on an as-needed basis when federal regulations are released or updated. So federal, obviously, meaning not state. So an example would be very recently, the IRS released a FAQ on how HRA, HSA, and FSA funds can be paid or reimbursed for items such as nutrition, wellness, and general health. So IRS, we know, is a federal agency. So this is the type of thing that we, UBA, will provide an advisor on. The advisors are sent out by email to the UBA partner firms. I'm going to show you an example. Let's do this one. It's just opening, sorry. Okay, can you see this, the joint agency guidance? Okay,
Yeah.
So this is an example, thank you. This is an example of an advisor. This was written, you know, within a couple of days of this guidance being released. from the federal agencies. And as you can see on the top left, we leave room for the partner firm logo. So like I said, these are sent out proactively to the firms. However, you may not see it for one reason or the other. So what I want you to do, sorry, where is my other thing? What I want you to do is to make a habit of going in, where do I want to be? Sorry, here. No, here. Yes, going in and seeing what advisors are recent, and you can send them out to your book of business. So you can sit back and say, oh, someone in my agency is handling that. Someone will take care of it. Well, you really want to baby your book of business. And so you can come in here, you can mark your calendar for once a week, once every 2 weeks, see what's the newest advisor, drop in your partner firm logo and email it out to your clients. They will love it. It will make a really big difference. Another thing that we have available to all of you is this compliance client toolbox. So we have the annual notices packet, an annual benefit plan amounts card. So this shows the limits and maximums for everything you can think of, FSA, HSA, you name it, it's in there. This is a really popular one, the change in status events, employee election changes. So these are reasons that your clients, employees are allowed to make plan changes off cycle. These are the kinds of questions that come up very regularly. Again, you can drop your partner firm logo on it, send it out to your clients. We have the 2023 compliance calendar and the coordinating poster. Send these out, sit down, give yourself whatever, an hour, create all of these, send them out to your clients. Every month we create a recap. So the March recap is going to be released on the 5th. It's released the 5th of every month, and it recaps the prior month on all things compliance. Very, very good resource for your clients to have. We also do a quarterly newsletter on compliance and labor issues. We have a compliance question of the week. You can send this out. I encourage any of you who are particularly interested or intrigued in compliance to join the compliance collaboration group. It's an opportunity for people with common interests to get together and talk about what's happening in compliance. How is it impacting their client? What questions and concerns do they have? And we have a monthly compliance webinar that does require a subscription. I encourage you to ask your manager if if your firm is subscribed to the webinar series, and it can, start a conversation if you're not. And I'm happy to provide information on it. You can just email support@ubabenefits.com. We have two amazing presenters. We're joined today by Vince Ashton from Brio Benefits. He is the Vice President of Client Relations, and he will tell you more about himself. And he is joined by Katie Taylor, who is the Vice President of Strategic Services Group. I welcome both of you, and I would love it if you could give these guys a little bit of your background.
Absolutely, and thank you, Andrea, for inviting us for this opportunity. And team, we're going to be diving in very, very shortly into what I like to call our client life cycle and our renewal process. And Katie will get an opportunity to speak as well. But just to kind of kick things off again, Vincent Ashton, I have over 18 years experience in the insurance world, 13 years with my current organization. Katie, how many years are you up to?
I am 19 years at this organization, and then about another 8 on top of that for insurance.
So well plus into the 20s and 19 years young at one organization. And what I can tell you is from our perspective at Brio Benefit Consulting, we became partners within UBA about 7.5 years ago, and it really helped us to transform our organization or really take our company to the next level. Not to say that we were stuck in a rut. We had a lot of hunters out there. A lot of people are on the sales side. Account managers were there as well. But ultimately, my partner of my firm, Jason Pastrano, went to the first UBA national meeting, literally came back and said, one, we've got a lot of things that we need to work on, because I just learned so many different innovative tools, opportunities to help us grow the business and provide what's most important in our world, in the account management world, which is a better client experience. Ultimately, our goal, and we always say this at Brio, is we have certain core requirements that we have to establish, but what we ultimately want to do is be trendsetters in the marketplace, to be the organization that other companies want to be like, that they can't touch because of all the things that we're able to do. And UBA provides you that opportunity, whether it be for things that you just heard about. And if you were listening, just in case you heard me going over some of those innovative tools, you're going to learn things about self-insured opportunities that you may have never heard before, some ideas and some concepts. You might also have access to different organizational tools like QTalk Rock, as I call it. John will literally respond faster than anyone in the industry. So when you're having that compliance issue, you're having that kind of situation, you have that as part of your organization as well. There are a wealth of materials that are available just by being UBA members, but probably the greatest advantage in the world of UBA is the story I'll share between me and Katie before we get started. So Katie, is it about 4 years ago now, or is it 5 years? Because I'm thinking pre-pandemic, correct?
I think it's 5, yeah.
5. So about 5 years ago, we are going to our UBA Northeast conference meeting. We have our own section on the Northeast corridor. And basically one of the partners of my firm says, we have a new organization that's in Michigan. They want to see what we're all about here. And so Katie and Doug came from the Michigan to see our meeting and actually had a lot of questions. And Katie and I have basically established a relationship where when I saw Katie last week, she was kind enough to give my newborn child a nice little Michigan swag from the Michigan Wolverines. I hope you're not another Big Ten or different fan of sports, but I got a lot of Michigan swag from Katie. But it's not just the swag that you're getting back and forth. It's the camaraderie. It's the ability to bounce off an experienced individual like Katie when I am running into an issue in the state of Michigan. Or can I bounce this off you that I'm trying to do with my clientele? That is what you're able to do through UBA, and that is establish relationships that will help you better your client experience. That is the biggest takeaway I want everyone to think about here, because as we all know, and Katie, you can switch to the next page, you as account managers are going to be asked to do a lot of things. And this is going to look like a lot on the screen right now. Ultimately, what your goal is will always be listening to the client and making sure that you're satisfying their needs. And again, trying to provide that experience. So from our perspective, you're going to see that this is a client lifecycle process, and you'll see it says large group. I want to be very clear with everyone. Although the term large group is listed there, this works for every single client. There might be pieces you take out because you don't do them in the small group marketplace, which is where my background originally started from. But ultimately, what our team will do is we will set an expectation with all of our clients that there are a certain amount of core meetings that we want to have every single year with a client. So a lot of times people say, well, I'm not sure what we're supposed to talk about, or what am I supposed to do at these times? This life cycle process will at least give you an idea, and we'll show you what some of the information looks like as we kind of proceed through the presentation today. But ultimately, in our first meeting when we are transitioning on a new account that we've just picked up, we like to set the expectation with, if we're talking about a partnership, these are the meetings and the things that we're going to try and accomplish for you all as I start going through this kind of large life cycle and process. But again, understanding you have a lot of things on your plate. The ultimate idea of this kind of process here is to increase efficiency for everyone. Give you actual talk track, things that will help you with, hey, I'm stuck on what I'm supposed to be doing with the client here. Hey, I'm not getting a response. Well, you'll have guaranteed check-ins when you start looking through. So let's get started. Client lifecycle, let's just hypothetically say is we use this, a group renewed on January 1st. So once a group renews, we all walk away and we'll go home, and then we'll see you then in September or October, right? unfortunately. So as we start our process with every client, there's obviously the post-open enrollment check-in. Easiest check-in, opportunity for you to get a temperature or a gauge as to what the client felt about open enrollment. So not listed here, that we're actually revamping as we speak, is an open enrollment survey that we're going to begin doing with clients, starting with our 7-1 groups. But easy things to check on. Did everyone get their ID card? Were all their rates correct in the system? Have you seen a new invoice? Basically kind of go over the renewal experience, whether it be through the survey or just what the client is seeing. Hey, you know, I really like the way that this was taken into, we did this. Hey, you know, I think we need to do an extra meeting, or we need to do an extra webinar. We need another additional webinar in another language. These are all those points, team members, that you can take, hold on to, and add into the next year, because people love to hear that you are listening to them. I can't stress that enough. So there's nothing better than when a client comes to me after an open enrollment check-in and says, I need to do one in Spanish. And when we get up to the end of the year and we start the open enrollment process, it begins with, okay, now that we're here, I know that you needed this from last year. It really takes into consideration what their thoughts are, and you're listening to those team members that need the assistance from the HR side, right? From our post-open enrollment check-in, we will schedule one of our core meetings, which is our stewardship report. So from a stewardship report perspective, and there will be examples within the next couple of slides in particular, but I'm not going to switch to those right now. Ultimately, our stewardship/compliance review is basically a document that is the collaboration between both Brio and our client. It is, these are the decision points that you made. This is what we were tasked with executing. So we like to put in what renewals were, what changes were made, any new plan enhancements. Did you add a direct contract with Teladoc? Did you transition your enrollment platform? Did you make a carrier change? All of that will be listed in one document for our clients. And again, I'm more than willing to share that document with anyone that's out there. It can get pretty detailed. We are actually looking to pare it down a little bit as well. But think about it as an opportunity to say to a client, not, hey, look what I did, but more about, this is what you wanted, this is what was actually executed on, and now we can start to proceed forward within our time frame. So we'll talk about compliance usually in the month of February, because ACA reporting is going to come up. We'll talk about sexual harassment training. As somebody who's located in New York, we are required by state in October every single year to have sexual harassment training provided. So we'll bring those things up. We'll prepare for the filing of the Form 5500. Is there a new plan or wrap document that is necessary that you would need? Again, if you go back to that compliance calendar, just to use an example of what Andrea had shown, you're giving them all the notices, but did you need to update a benefit guide and they wanted it after the fact? Or do they want you to look at the PCORI fee, things of that nature? And our new favorite in the world of healthcare that I'm hoping is, I'm not the only one that's getting driven wild by, transparency and coverage CAA has been a lot of fun in the world right now. As we all know, every carrier wants their information in all different ways before the June 1st deadline there. So usually that meeting, no more than 10, 20 minutes. But it is the easiest way to schedule out time with a client to do a webinar in most cases. Most clients have shifted from that being live to say, okay, now that we've concluded the prior year, let's talk about what our goals are for the next year. So from this stewardship meeting, instead of having to waste time or utilize and trying to get back in touch with someone that can be a little bit more difficult to reach out to, we will then schedule one of our core meetings, which is our strategy session, right then and there. So that way we don't have to worry about timing. We usually schedule it for the next month after, okay? The strategy session, probably the most important meeting for all of us on the account management side. Goal to focus and align on what they are looking for in the upcoming year to increase value perception around employee benefits. That is all we are trying to do at our organization, because we have all different types of matrix that will show you that you can have the best insurance in the world, but if the employees do not feel that way, regardless, it's just a waste of time for everybody. So within our strategy session, we will use our 7 KPIs, our 7 key performance indicators to dictate what we're looking at. We start with cost containment. Is the group, depending upon its size, regardless of its small or large group, we all have different rules in different states. Maybe it's time to start talking to them about level funded. Maybe it's a current self-insured group. Maybe it's time and they're a little bit on the smaller side. Maybe it's time to talk about a stop-loss captive that might be out there, the Paretos of the world. Maybe it's a very large self-insured group that you're talking about here. Oh, let's talk about the potential of carving out RX benefits. Maybe it's someone that's just an individual group, you know, with a couple employees on there, but you really need to make sure you keep that relationship going. Maybe it's time to talk about the client experience that they're having with the carrier. Is this something that, even though we might market, let them tell you, hey, we do need to look at other carriers, or hey, we really like who we are today. It's going to help you further down the road to increase your efficiency as opposed to waiting for answers and being reactive. We always want to try and be as proactive as possible. Communication, we'll start talking to our organizations about things like virtual benefit counselors, whether it's a Naya or an Alex tool, whether it's a digital front door that we're utilizing now, which is like HealthJoy, which is where everyone has an app, their ID cards on their phone now. They're able to use a virtual assistant with regards to claims and review information. We'll also begin to talk about lifestyle benefits. What we have come to find since the pandemic in particular is most organizations and most of the statistics that are out there from our side as account managers are, hey, everyone gives medical, dental, vision, and life insurance benefits. What are you doing to enhance my experience? And with 5 generations in the workforce today, employees are answering surveys saying, I'll actually take a little bit less in money if you're actually thinking about my needs here. So from a lifestyle perspective, we'll talk about financial wellness, whether it's through companies like a Vault or an Origin. We'll talk about EAP's women's and family health planning services, whether it's a Progeny, a Maven, those types of services. We'll begin to dive into other ideas. The second greatest response that receives the most response in the last 2 SHRM conferences about what benefits do employees want? Pet insurance. Pin pause, right there. UBA established a relationship. We've been working on pet insurance for the last, I want to say 5 years. During the pandemic, we actually did a webinar called The Puppy Boom. We have a very large veterinarian practice, and we decided for a way to touch our clients was, let's do a webinar series about how you take care of the damn thing, right? I don't know about dogs and cats at that point, if I just got it for the first time. But little things like that. Employees want you to be thinking not just of themselves, but of their families as well. Financial wellness, pet insurance. These are the things that are coming up. So there are a significant amount of tools on the UBA portal and different vetted out solutions for these types of services, whether it be identity theft protection. We just began working with Norton through our established relationships with UBA, big name in the marketplace. That is one of the values again on the UBA side. So we take that time to go through lifestyle, wellness. Now, wellness strategy a little bit different depending upon if you're fully or self-insured groups. We all know it's a little bit different because in the fully insured world, it's not really going to move the needle. But people are looking for wellness events, whether it be through the health fairs direct, through the carriers and what they establish. They're looking for opportunities on what can I do to have no cost out of pocket, but still show employees that I care. We always establish one of my favorite or easiest wellness strategies, which are go on your carrier's website, complete the health risk assessment, go for your annual physical. We can get reporting depending upon group size, and then raffle off a iPad, a TV if you want to, you know, depending upon your group size. And if the carriers are willing to give you a wellness credit and provide you that reporting, you can do something as simple to increase value perception of saying, go out, do these things, and then as an organization, plaster it everywhere on our website, in our benefits, whether it be in our newsletters, in our Slack systems. Hey, employee just won an iPad for going for a free service by going for preventive care, right? Obviously, advocacy is all of our world. What are we doing to actually establish a relationship with a client? So again, we're through about 5 of the KPIs that we utilize, our key performance indicators. Advocacy, anytime I start a relationship with a new client, if anyone's a new account manager here, the first question I will ask them, if you can't tell, is, do you like to be emailed or do you mind calls? Because if you can't tell, I'm a talker. I like to talk a lot. So I like to know how my client likes to interact with me. And it's a simple question. And it usually goes a long way for people saying, hey, instead of just telling me what you're going to do, you're actually asking me how I like to learn or what I like to know at my own speed. And my response to most people is, hey, you want to go emails with me? I'm great. Black and white, you'll get emails from me. If I'm painting in the gray, you might get a follow-up call. Do you need me to email you to schedule a time, or can I just call you on your phone? People appreciate you taking the time and understanding that their time is just as valuable as your time is. But ultimately, it's our jobs to make sure that all of these things are taken care of from an employee perspective during the strategy meeting. We'll touch on technology again, and we'll usually talk about our retirement team. We'll try and answer on all of these to set up for the end of the year. So we're talking in March so that we're prepared for all final decisions by October. So the next thing people will say is, well, you did the strategy meeting. If you don't follow up from it, if you're setting up an employee survey and you don't answer on those results, it's going to decrease value perception. So the follow-up from our strategy session is, hey, I want to learn more about pin pause. We are then scheduling our demos in the April-May timeframe, sometime in the next 2 months, depending upon when the client has their own time. So as we get through 5 months of the year so far, team, you're basically looking at the opportunity at multiple touches at this point to be able to say, hey, I'm always in front of my client and I understand what their needs are. As we approach the June timeframe, June to July is our mid-year review, depending upon your group size. When it's a self-insured group or it's a level funded group or a fully self-insured group, you're going to have more utilization data. You're going to have more historical if they've been in for a while. And depending upon if you've established any relationships, you might have access to population health management tools. We utilize companies like Vital Insight, Springbuck, Deerwalk, I believe is a big one with Katie's team as well. All of these to be able to provide them data. The larger the group, the more you want them to know that you're looking at who they are now, who they have been historically, so that you can forecast and provide the best predictions for what the future will hold based on the data you're seeing. Now, most people say, well, I'm an account manager, but I work on groups that are 20 and below. I'm not getting any of that information, so I'm just going to tune this guy out right now. Understood. But the mid-year still gives you an opportunity to ask the carrier for data, which is always a challenge, but it's worth the opportunity. But it gives you a time to recalibrate and focus on all of the things that have happened before, from the strategy meetings all the way until now, so that you can set the expectation for the renewal and their goals. So whether it's a 25-minute call, whether it's an hour meeting, even if you're getting on the phone with your client, hey, how has it been? What's the experience been like? This is what we're seeing from renewals right now in your marketplace for your market segment. What are you thinking? This is the date I expect the renewal to be released by. If you've been doing this long enough, you'll know kind of a gauge with all of your carrier partners when that will happen. Boom, you have something to go over with them from the renewal set, as well as anything that has bled over from the strategy session. So as you get to the first half of the year, if this is a January renewing group, everything has been about setting the expectation and providing them any data sets when you get there. From the time of July till probably October, November, this is your time to make sure that you have your preparations and get your renewal set for all groups. So if you go to the bottom half in particular, renewal preparation in July, internal preparation, sometimes even more important than before you can get out to the client. We like to have meetings, the account managers at my organization. Hey, what are you hearing about this, that, or the other? Are you seeing clients go with these types of tools? What are we thinking about when it comes to who the client is, what they're looking for? And although people necessarily aren't working on the same exact account from the account management perspective, usually don't have two account managers on one group, there are things that you can take from anyone that will help fine tune your process. So as we start the expectation on the larger group side, we'll immediately start to ask for the census. Because the last thing in the world you want to do is be reactive on a census while you're waiting for renewals. If you have the ability to send out prior to, it's a great thing to start the process. Make sure that you have everything prepared and ready. Obviously, if a group is looking at a lot of acquisitions, you might hold off a little bit in timing, but it also gets the kind of the flow started with the client, because it allows you to also, at the same time of requesting census, it allows you to schedule that pre-renewal meeting. The larger the group, the more important the pre-renewal meeting will be. So as you have that pre-renewal meeting, you're starting to make sure that everything you've talked about so far is in line with where you are. Get to August, you can begin negotiations with carrier on the larger size groups. Obviously, if it's a small group and it's a a policy or an insurance plan that's filed with the Department of Insurance quarterly. Not much you can do on that side of the negotiation, but there may be some additional products within the market segment. That's the time to think about. Maybe it's a group that hasn't dipped their toe with high deductible health plans yet. Maybe it's a group that has said to you from those first meetings from a strategy perspective, hey, I want to start thinking about potentially adding a health reimbursement arrangement. I want to go the HRA direction. You can start looking at plan designs that are at least available, and you can at least start to give the client a gauge as to what the timing will be as to when everything will be released. So as you move along from the August timeframe, you get to that renewal meeting, right? Renewal meetings are all different depending upon group size, but there are obviously core pieces to everyone. You're going to be showing rates. You're going to be showing, in our eyes, we always show contribution strategies for our clients. We're preparing all of that information. Did we have to go out on ancillary marketing, which we would have already established within the strategy meetings with regards to cost containment? Is it something that we're happy? We dislike the carrier? You already know the answers to all of this. So in September, we're setting up our initial renewal meeting so that we can then start the month with the initial to get to the point of October, because there might be back and forth in negotiation, which will be confirming client decisions on our large group process. Small group, you're probably just thinking about the renewal here. So if you take what happens in October and you move what it says right now in July to October, that might be the way to start thinking about it there as well. Maybe you move it down a couple of months, because again, this can work for everybody regardless of group size. So once we have our confirmed decisions, we will go into memorializing all the renewal decisions, requesting the documents that will be needed, working with all items, including ALEC enrollment presentations, and our favorite for everyone that has to deal with the fun experience of dealing with technology, whether it's an ADP on certain clients of ours, or a Paycom, or enrollment platforms like a B-Swift or Employee Navigator that you may have access to. You might start that conversation there, and then we begin to establish, depending upon what the client would like, scheduling open enrollment conversations, as well as setting up the open enrollment meetings. Some clients we work with, hey, I just want to do one meeting. We're going to lock everything in from there, and we're going to work on the pieces. Others, especially if there's carrier changes, we will have our implementation team, which I am included on it as part of the account management team. We will go step by step. When do you want to have your open enrollment? What languages do you need? Do we need to think about this piece? Oh, we're changing the commuter. So are we instituting a blackout period? Who's establishing the runout period for the FSA plan? All of those little tricks that I had to learn painfully, probably by making a mistake, are all within a checklist that we'll have available to us to make sure that we are hitting on everything that a client will need to prepare for a successful open enrollment. Again, larger the group, if you're on a 1-1 kind of calendar basis, we'll then do our open enrollment meetings, which again gives us the opportunity to conduct either live or webinar, review with the client, make sure that the client is clear about expectations being set as to when files need to be sent over to the carriers. The larger the group, and what I've learned through, again, 13 years at this company in particular, is usually the first Friday of the month prior to your renewal date. That is when carriers all want all of their files, except for spending account people, because they're crazy. They want it even before that. But so last year, for example, December 2nd was the first Friday of the month. Now, because of the way that the month worked, there was a little bit more wiggle room, but it was important to note that from our perspective, that was our target date. Anytime, if I can give you any kind of wisdom around anything around renewals, one of my greatest aspects is I love to schedule meetings. And I love to make sure that everyone's staying on point with the expectation. So if it's a 1-1 group, I know that the file needs to be over by 12/2, which means I have to be doing open enrollment either prior to Thanksgiving or right after, but the file's going to go over at that time, which means that I have to have all of my materials built by this date, and I just work backwards. Once the decision is made, we then work into there. And important for any group, and you can basically build almost one of these for all of your group, we will put a timeline in our renewal process and in our renewal presentation. So at least it starts to give people an idea of dates and times. Again, it can be fluid. You can move things around, but at least you're starting by saying to somebody, hey, I know there's going to be a lot of legwork here, but I'm going to be able to help you. Even though I've got, 40, 50, 150 renewals going on at once, it shows people that you're thinking of them. Hey, this kind of timeline is a pretty standard one, but we can use or we can go off of that. Another opportunity to give yourself a touch with your client. And then from there, from November, you see you get into the check-ins, because at this point, the files are being sent to the carriers. We're asking if there's anything else in the future that they need. So it kind of goes into the post-open enrollment check-in. And then we're launching our process out for the next year. Again, this is not every client at Brio has this. And I understand it's not going to work for everybody, but there are some cores in here that if you take away these pieces, they give you opportunities to come up with touch points and things to discuss with your client, and also give you the opportunity when you have, that partner of your firm or that person that your manager that's asking you, well, what are you doing to try and make sure that we're in touch with our client? Well, I have a built-in kind of checklist. I have a check-in time for multiple opportunities throughout the course of the year based on these meetings that are established. Now, Katie, if you don't mind shooting to the next page, just as we said, there's a couple of meetings here in particular. One of those is the stewardship appointment, and I will point out we are literally in the process of revamping this as we speak. But it is important to note, as I talk about that meeting that talks about that collaboration between the two, we have our blueprint meeting overview. So we do a discovery and blueprint with any client that we take on. It's important to note that in this case, for this group, and I used the line already, the line that we took from them, from what they had said in our prior meeting, is we want to make sure that we emphasize and acknowledge not only that we care about you, the employee, but for their family as well. And so this is a group that added a Maven, that had the funds to do so. They've added different types of services so that they are looked at as a class, as an employer, to try and attract and retain and attain top talent out there in the marketplace. You'll see kind of a listing of what we kind of give them in our stewardship report. This is a self-insured group in what they had in place prior to. You get an idea of what their admin fees are, because a lot of times when you as an account manager have a new HR person, what is the first thing that happens? A new CFO. What the heck have we been doing about our health insurance or our employee benefits? What if I was able to tell that person, hey, you just hired you, hey, it's great to meet you. Why don't we schedule time to go over what happened in the last year and what we're focused on? I already have a document built. And again, it doesn't have to be this detailed. It's just a checklist. I'm a little bit wordy, as I like to talk a lot, as I've said as well. So you can break this down and take out some of these pieces, but ultimately you can say to that person without having to struggle, hey, where's my contact list for all of the Brio contacts or my carrier contacts? We'll send that along with the stewardship report immediately to any new HR, new CFO, new person coming in, to kind of show them this is what your team has been working on before you, your predecessor. Now let's talk about what you want to see and how you want to shape your employee benefits. Next slide, Katie. So again, just a little bit more. I know I talked about some of the benefit highlights and what we talked about. This was a group that transitioned all ancillary benefits to Unum. They began offering worksite benefits. Remember, team, as much as you don't think, quote unquote, some of you might not think I'm selling, you're selling every day. You are who you are. You are selling yourself. People only want to work with people that they like. I always go with the old adage, if I wouldn't sit at a bar and have a beer with you, I probably am not going to talk to you. AKA why me and Katie get along real well, because we both drink beer. But no, not just that. But ultimately, you are working on those things. So you're giving people the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not telling you have to add worksite benefits, but statistics are showing that this is what organizations are doing. Employees are looking for ways to get benefits they wouldn't necessarily have access to. That was an opportunity there. Just from having conversations with this client, we were able to add a manufacturing assistance program around their RX. They did not want to carve out RX in this group in particular, but we still wanted to talk to them about cost containment items that are available through just your current RX features. So again, where did we learn about these types of opportunities? The availability of somebody like a UBA. Then you'll see a couple other informations there. Another tool that they were utilizing, which is Leave Logic, as opposed to their LOA that they were using through Alex. And Katie, I believe I have one more slide just to give everyone that kind of opportunity, and then I'll be good. And then from a strategy session perspective, as I talked about before, you get an idea of just some of the bullet points that we're talking about with clients right here. So are there any upcoming projects? Is there acquisitions coming up? do we need to know about? I just had recently a hospitality group tell me they're acquiring another hotel. So it's, hey, we need to build out from a technology perspective. We need to establish what we're looking for from timing, setting the expectation, because getting that relationship off from the right start, you'll never be able to look back if that starts on the wrong foot. But you get an idea here from a benefit strategy perspective. When are we going to utilize the UBA benchmark survey through Milliman now? So again, one of the biggest tools that's available through UBA. Everybody likes to know how their plans stack up against other organizations from a contribution and an employee and a plan design benefit perspective. There are a lot of pieces within the benchmarking survey, but we focus primarily on those two features. How does my plan look against other organizations? What are my contributions in line with the different benchmarking tiers and criteria that will be out there? We'll open it up about potentially marketing, depending upon the group and how they've been. And again, this could be a 20-life group that says, we went through the open enrollment experience and Blue Cross Blue Shield really dropped the ball with how they did our enrollments this year. You want to know that because you can prepare yourself so that you're aware, do I need to look at marketing? Plan design discussion, whether it be a 220, 200, 2,000 life group. Do you want to hear about HRA? Do you want to hear about HSA? Do we need to do a funding review education and talk about fully insured, minimum premium, level funded, all the way to self-insurance? We'll have those conversations. It'll give us the chance to be educators to our clients, as well as if you go down the list from a benefit evaluation perspective. As I said before, if everyone has medical, dental, vision, and life, they're looking for those things that you can do, whether it be within the carrier in certain instances or outside. So whether it's artificial reproductive technology, IVF services, whether it be, like I said, women's health, family planning through the Mavens, the Progenies, the Carrots of the world, whether we're looking for a musculoskeletal, MSK in the world of Hinge, virtual primary care solutions. One thing that we like to establish for our clients is the ability to offer telemedicine services outside of the carrier. Now, some may say, well, why would you do that? Well, you have claims now that are not hitting your claim pick, right? You have the ability to have a $0 consult fee for all general medicine services. You can add in those hot button topics like dermatology, but more importantly, mental health services, as everyone's looking for ways to offer additional lines into mental health and kind of be able to take things from there. We also do have a 401k retirement team, the Brio financial services team. So from our perspective, we also like to make sure that people know that we can do the same evaluation that we take on the employee benefits side, do the same thing on the 401k retirement side. Again, an opportunity to offer the same level of service to try and increase the value perception for everybody. There will be multiple other services within the strategy session that we kind of talk about. Things along the lines of, as I said before, mental health, pet insurance. Well-being was something that was new. Employee financial wellness, which has been a big topic lately in particular, especially with what's going on in the world of the economy and inflation. One of the other relationships we've established is with a company called Benefits Hub that provides an employee perk or discount program. It is basically free to the client, and basically with everything going on with regards to milk being what milk costs and gas being what gas costs and everything that's happening, we're looking for ways to say to an employee, hey, for your basics, the minimal essentials you may have, which could be car insurance, homeowners insurance, you need discount to rent cars for your executives when they're flying to different places. You're looking for discounts to go out to dinner for your family, Disney World, movie theater tickets. We have a company called Benefits Hub that we're utilizing, which basically provides a website where employees have access to all those perks. ADPs of the world, they all do those things. But the biggest thing to note, team, is if you're not talking about this with your clients, somebody from my company, not saying from UBA, but somebody from my company is looking to access these types of pain points. Are you getting a rounded out portfolio? Do you have all the needs that you have that are being answered by your current team? And this is the way that people are looking to try to take your client away from you. You are trying to establish that long-standing relationship by giving them the tools that they need to provide the best client experience, the best experience for their employees. Ultimately, all of these are in your tool bag, and most of them are available simply by going on UBA and looking at the vetted solutions which can give you a ton of different topics to bring up to your employees, all the way from the beginning of Think HR, which is now Mineral, that we give all of our HR teams in compliance as an expert, an HR expert service. So again, there's a ton of different opportunity that's out there for you as an account manager. You're being asked to wear a million different hats, from, as I pointed out, being a salesperson, to taking care of an account, to establishing a relationship to keep that ongoing. All of these things can be done simply by just looking at keeping your timelines and your efficiencies around what you need to do with your client. So with that being said, Katie, I'm now going to turn it over to you to go over renewal process in particular.
You don't want to go over your mid-year executive medical summary?
No, what I was thinking about it, but you know what? At the end of the day, this is more of a self-insurance piece, and I kind of ran over a couple minutes here, so I want to make sure that you have access to that info, that you have your time here.
Okay, no worries. This is why I like doing these with you, Vinny. You do all the talking. I just got to come in on the back end. All right. Well, hello, everybody. I am Katie Taylor from Strategic Services Group. A lot of what Vinny says, the value of UBA, is just amazing. These relationships. I was again at the Northeast UBA conference, and they were gracious enough to allow us to come in and visit again. And just the connections that I've built with people there is huge. It is, I like to compare it to the Wizard of Oz. You can peel back the curtain and find out what's going on. You can't do that from your competitor down the street, but anybody at UBA is willing to share. And that is the biggest value that I've received. A lot of knowledge from the different vendors and the different partners, but really just that value of relationship is so important. So, all right, we're going to jump into our action plan. So this is our action plan that is in our blueprint process that we go out to all prospects with and clients, and just talking about how we work. So I'm going to start with the ongoing service. You know, we get agent of record, we are working to service them. We're then going to the mid-year review, pre-renewal meeting, market analysis, financial modeling projection, refined rate negotiations, again, the renewal meeting then, open enrollment strategy, employee communication, open enrollment and implementation, and then post-implementation review. So some of the same similar topics and process that you saw with Vinny. We're going to get into it a little bit more on the next slide, but that is the accountability cycle that we go in, we promote to our clients and prospects, and we make sure that we follow. And this is both for, a lot of it's mostly for large group, but there's, as Vinny said, there's some nuggets in here that you can take away from small group. So if we're talking about our renewal process, this is again, mostly for large group, but we do have our small group following it pretty closely. 6 months out, we are having an internal pre-renewal meeting. This is where we're pulling in the agent, the account manager, the service rep, our financial analyst, and our proposal team all in the room to have a discussion. What's going on with this client? What do we think they're going to want to do this year? Are there any issues, hot topics, frustrations? Anything that we need to share with each other, because it takes a team to service these clients and everybody has input. So service issues, what can we upsell? Pet insurance. We've just recently had pet insurance to a client. They were really looking for something new to add, so that's what they offered. And then also the systems utilization. We give all of our clients for free Mineral, formerly known as Think HR. So how are they using it? Are they using it? Are they finding the value? Because it's an awesome tool with great resources. Compliance dashboard is given to some of our clients. Some of them are using it, some aren't. And then obviously telemed. We've had some conversations where $0 copay plan, we keep offering it. The group keeps taking it. They're offering it to their employees, but are their employees utilizing it? So we're having all that conversation prior to going in 120 to 150 days before the renewal in our client pre-renewal meeting. So that is the client, the decision makers, the agent, and the account manager, and sometimes we're taking the financial analyst in. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to listen. We're going to say what's working, what's not. Technology. Are they happy with the technology they have? Do they want to change it? Do they want to add something? Talk about claims. How are you guys running with your data? You know, if we're able to get claims reporting on groups that are 50 or more enrolled, so we're having those discussions, whether they're self-funded or fully insured, and just sharing what's going on. Benchmarking. This is where we do the UBA benchmarking, but also other benchmarking from, we have Xywave products, Broker Briefcase, and some of their other tools. And so we're pulling benchmarking from there as well. Just kind of show the client where they're at, what they're doing. You know, what new benefits do you want to offer? Again, we're bringing up the systems utilization. And then we are talking about the timeline. Let's talk about the timeline. Here's when we anticipate the renewal. When do you want to have open enrollment, and what are you looking to accomplish this open enrollment? Okay, you're thinking about offering another plan. You want to get utilization till this plan, promoting a new benefit. Just really, what do they as a client want us to hone in on to educate their team? Hey, if we're lucky, it's going to be a renew as is, and it's just educating people on the benefits that they have. You just never know, but we find that that is the prime time to have that conversation, because when you get to the client renewal meeting, we're coming in, again, it's meeting with the agent, the client, and the account manager, and we are talking about comparisons, the quotes, what the strategy is going to be. We're going to give our recommendation. There, talk about costs and contributions, and then the solutions from the pre-renewal meeting. So what is the timeline? Open enrollment discussion. And so we're going to say, here is the plan, and here's what we're doing moving forward. You go through open enrollment. I did write down, Vinny, I like your idea of the open enrollment survey. I'm going to take that. I'm going to pick your brain on that a little bit more as you guys continue to finalize that. But then you're going into the post open enrollment meeting. That's 30 to 90 days post the renewal, because by then ID cards should have been received. They should have received their first invoice. Any issues should have been flushed out, and to really see if we delivered on what they were looking for, because we're always looking for that feedback. So if we go to the next slide, it just goes a little more into detail about explaining what the different meetings are here internally. Like I said, the internal pre-renewal meeting, the goal of the meeting is to discuss the upcoming renewal planning for the client and bring any valuable information. This is so important. We used to not do this, and we would find out after the fact that service reps had something to bring in, or the financial analyst, and it's not just the account manager and the agent. And one of our core values is better together. And so we recognize that that was a fault of ours, and where it's just bringing everybody together to have that conversation, because we all play a different role in retaining that client and in also seeing and servicing that client. Renewal process, again, we kind of went over this, but the client pre-renewal meeting, we're going out. The goal is to listen, find out what's working, discuss technology, claims data, because this is extremely important, especially as you go out to market, and then the system utilizations and the time for renewal timeline and open enrollment. And the great thing is, you know, with this, we're trying to define roles better. We are in a growth mode. We are in developing processes and procedures. And so I was like, okay, well, who's going to update the rest of the team? Well, that's the account manager's responsibility to make sure that it gets done, and to update notes in the system, so that way we're all on the same page moving forward and have that direction. Client renewal meeting. This is, you know, again, where we're going in and presenting the renewals, the alternative options, and really trying to walk out of there and make a decision. Recently, conversation has been within the agency here that in the past, we used to have our clients sign off on rates. I was a big proponent of it. I'd send my client a spreadsheet with, hey, here's your rate breakdown, please sign off. We've had some changes where we've gotten away from that, and we haven't been bit in the butt yet, but we're going back to that, saying, okay, we need to make sure that we have these clients signing off. So I say this today because after going through open enrollment just recently, it came up, but it's always a good reminder of, you want clients to authorize, you want clients to sign off, you want clients to know what you're doing. So that way they're on the same page with you, and that communication is so, so important. So we walk out of that renewal meeting with our to-dos and with where we're all on the same page, because we want to make sure that we are aligned, we see our client's vision, and we are working to be better together and follow through with what they want delivered. Renewal process, client post open enrollment meeting. Again, this is where we're doing the stewardship report. We're not as fancy as Vinny yet, but we're getting there. On some of our super large groups, we get very detailed, but it's so important that the clients understand what you're doing for them, how you're helping. And it's also extremely important that you get that feedback. We've had some bumps and bruises. I'm transparent, I'll be honest, with some of our clients who have implemented their own Ben admin system. Some we've helped, some they've done their own. And so by communicating together and us sharing best practices with them and saying, you know, maybe you guys could have done this way, this a little differently, along with them sharing with us about what they didn't like. We use Employee Navigator and how they like us to better round out the system for their employees, or add, you know, Jellyvision, Alex to it, upload Brain Shark videos, whatever the case may be. It's all about that working together, but making sure that we are touching on these main points. You know, it's through this process that we learn. We learn about the different ideas as to what Vinny was talking about with, you know, the hot topics, the lifestyle benefits, the pet insurance, the financial wellness. As account managers, you guys are having these conversations with these groups. May not be in one of these meetings. It may just be a casual on the phone as you're talking to them, doing your check-ins, finding out what they want to do for their employees, because it's so hard to attract and retain talent right now. As you guys are finding that out, be sure to share it with your sales team. You know, we have some inexperienced salespeople that are trying to figure it out. So our account managers are trying to collaborate with them often because we want to see them successful. Plus, the better trained we have the agents and producers, the better they're going to make our lives as account managers, because we're going to be in that together. You know, nobody
Amen.
We have an agent who was young, new to the business, and he was like, I'm going to get an AOR. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, when's the renewal? 4/1. I'm like, uh-huh. And it was 3/1. I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, here we go. This is just going to be a nightmare. He goes, I'm going to let their current agent roll through the open enrollment. He goes, we're going to take an agent of record over 5/1. If you're working together closely with your agents and producers, they're going to understand the things that you don't mind being dumped in your lap or don't want being dumped in your lap, but it's working together to service that client in the best possible. We all know that if you get a renewal AOR letter for a 3/1, it's a 4/1 renewal, it's not going to be pretty, no matter what size the group is. So you're working with them to set it up best. And it's just, I can't share how important it is that you're working alongside those agents, that you guys are having those touch points, and that you're constantly communicating if the agents are involved. We do have some groups where the agents aren't involved and it's the account manager ruling it, but then account manager, it's extremely important that you're communicating with whoever else is on your team, because that working together makes it so much easier. And that's all I got.
Yeah, and if I may, and again, just talking about my relationship with Katie, that it was established from UBA, but I'll give you a perfect example of how you can start a relationship right off of just what I saw in the chat while I stop talking, Andrew, before I kick it back to you to conclude. Katie, on this call, had asked, hey, do we actually have a relationship with Benefits Hub? No, it's not through UBA right now. So when you hear things that people are utilizing, so when Katie and I are at the Northeast conference meeting, and why it's really important to go to the nationals where you get a lot more topics. When we're in our account management breakout session, people are bringing up things and they're firing off things that are working for them all over the place. One of our partners in Boston uses a company called Flores Leave Solution for leave management. Immediately, I'm talking to them about that. But Katie asked about Benefits Hub. It's as simple as this, Katie. After hearing that, all you got to do is go into the directory on UBA, pull out my email address, shoot me an email, and the value to UBA is built and established right here. Hey, this is the information I have about Benefits Hub. This is my contact if you want to reach out to them. And oh, by the way, if you want to brainstorm on how we're utilizing it, give me a call and I'll walk you through it. That's what we're able to do here that you can't do as an individual organization. That is the partnership that you can break out. Hey, Katie, I'm having an issue. I have a group right now in Michigan that has that needs help with a census. I don't know how you guys work your magic. Hey, Katie, I'm running into a situation where I need additional benchmarks. I don't have Xywave right now. Katie sent me over leave management benchmarks. Little things like that. Everyone is willing to help. The forum and the digest that goes out on Mondays, super important in responding back. Everyone, you can look people up on the directory, but that's how we all help everybody together grow. Because as we grow as individuals, we grow as a partnership together, which allows us to play in a different space than we would as any individual group. That's all I have to say there, Andrea. I'll let you go for. Oh, Katie, I'll let you go.
Well, I would say no, Vinny's right. I mean, take advantage. Last year, after the Account Manager Academy, I think I spoke to 2 other individuals that were in the academy that had further questions. We're happy to help. You know, I've never met someone who told me no. I've never met someone who said I won't share. It's all about that collaboration. And I think even UBA, one of our, like I said, core values is better together. I think that's one of UBA's core values as well, or at least I see it in some of the marketing. But it's just so important that, you know, by working together, we can compete against those big houses. And I'll tell you what, we're a hell of a lot more special because of the collaboration, because of the friendships, because of the relationships. I know I can call up Vinny for anything and he'd be there and he'd have my back and answer whatever, even if I was just having an absolute crap day and I need to pick me up. I mean, just listen to the guy talk. I mean, you just can't help smile, but when you hear him go with that New York accent.
Listen, we're all gonna have a crap day. We all work in account management. People are gonna beat you down. There's always, when you look at it, there's gonna be a day where, oh, they got me today. They just got me. But team, that's why, and you hear me use the term team and team members, because we look at this as everyone is one in unison. That allows us to play in a marketplace that we wouldn't be able to, that was able to allow us to go to a level that I'm not going to say we might not have ever gotten to, but we would have never gotten there as quick as we did if we didn't have this establishment. And that's why Katie, myself, come back and do these types of meetings, because we want to give back to you all the same way that others gave back to us. And that's why I will leave it now with Andrea as we're hitting 2 o'clock with, it's always worth your time to give back to them as well when you can. Again, as you just start to establish relationships or you're getting used to certain things, there are ways for you to give back, even if it's as simple as answering a question on the form that's going to help someone. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Vince Ashton and Katie Taylor, for that amazing presentation, and not just for the presentation, but for helping the attendees understand who UBA is and who they are for you, the attendees. We are support, we are foundation, we are what can help you grow. So many resources. What I showed you today was just the compliance page. You'll learn more about what UBA has to offer tomorrow. Thank you guys very much. And for the attendees, we're going to take a 5-minute break while we prepare for our next speaker. Thanks, guys.
Have a great day, everybody.
I will just go ahead and do a quick introduction. Welcome back, everybody, to the last presentation of today's Account Manager Academy. Today, we are going to hear from Janet Trautwein, who is the CEO of National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals, which is previously NAHU, National Association of Health Underwriters. Janet is intimately involved in lobbying and represents huge swaths of people, represents them to the government, and tries to get across legislation that benefits us as a whole. Janet, if you can go ahead and give a much better background of yourself to our listeners so they can get a sense of who you are and what you do. Thank you.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know who we are, we are a professional association for health insurance professionals. So think of, you expect that your lawyer belongs to the American Bar Association. You expect that your physician belongs to the American Medical Association or one of the ones for their specialty. So that's what we are. We are a professional association, and the role of any professional association, just so that you know this, is to advocate for, on behalf of its members, I'll explain that. That's what my whole presentation is about today. So more on that in a moment. To provide education and then other related services that help them do their jobs better. So some of the things that UBA does for you are similar. We really focus a lot on the advocacy piece through our organization, and that is representing you, Congress, the administration, state governments, and that type of thing to make sure that the laws that are passed are beneficial to you and, very importantly, to your clients, because look, if they can't offer coverage, then you don't have a job. So, and people can't access healthcare if they can't pay for it. So that's what we do. So what I want to start off with, and I have half an hour, Andrea, right? What I want to start off with today, I'm going to very quickly go through a presentation that's normally much longer. So if I skip over some information, just know that we can get you more information about any particular thing that's of more interest to you. You just need to ask the question. So I usually start off with a congressional overview. And we're going to just quickly tell you right now, I'm not going to go into as much detail as I normally do. But what I may want you to understand is that when we talk about how do you get things done in Congress, that it's different with the House and the Senate. You know, the Senate is a really slow-moving, deliberate body. Its members are reelected, 1/3 of them every 2 years. So they have a 6-year term and it rolls through. So only 1/3 of them are up for election. When a legislation is trying to be passed in the Senate, it takes a supermajority for most things, not everything, but most things to pass. So it slows everything down. And then usually the hearings that they have and the studies that they do are much longer, and it takes a lot longer for things to occur. And I'm not going to talk about the players right now, but in the House things move much more quickly. Everyone in the House is reelected every 2 years. So sometimes if you hear your member that serves in the House talking, maybe they even sound a little bit more pointed in their remarks. And that's because they're constantly campaigning all of the time. They're never not campaigning because everything is everywhere right now. So you have the internet and nothing that they say would not be public. So they're constantly running for re-election. And so the main thing you should know about these things is it's a political environment, but it's a really heavy, what's the right policy environment? All of them, although they all have their own opinions, want to do the right thing. But every decision they make is sort of intertwined with this political motivation as well. They all want to be reelected as well. And it's really interesting when someone has decided that they don't want to be reelected, the decisions that they make about what they work on are quite different than what they normally might. So it's really interesting to watch. So when things move forward and you look at what they're doing and you say, why would any person in their normal mind make a decision to do this? Just know that they don't think the same way. It's totally different. It is not normal. It's not normal logic that you and I would have about other things in our lives. But this is what we do. We specialize in this. We know how it works. And we've been doing it for our organization is almost 100 years old. So just to kind of get to it, I want to talk to you. I guess I'll start off saying before some of these, more recent things is I want to talk to you about some of the things that have happened since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, because there are a lot of things that were originally in the Affordable Care Act that are not in there anymore. Some things that would have made it really difficult for you to help your clients, things that were just very costly, as well as things that were just didn't make any sense. So a lot of those things have gone away. Most recently, some of the things that we've worked on was we're getting the extension of the pandemic-related HSA telehealth flexibilities. We worked on that really hard. We've worked another thing that happened recently that you may or may not be aware of is that people can now use their 401k accounts to pay for long-term care costs without a penalty for withdrawal. That was really important. controlling drug costs for Medicare beneficiaries, which has a spillover effect to everyone, whether or not they are in Medicare. So the rebate cap, the Part D spending cap, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of these. All of these were recent things that we had worked on, and they actually relate to group business as well. Also there, we have the broker compensation disclosure rules, but we lobbied very hard to make sure that as people were complying with that, that there was a good faith compliance standard test as to whether or not people were doing the right thing. Because, what I'm seeing as I look around the country, and we created a whole portal for how to comply with broker compensation disclosure on our website. And I see that people are disclosing in all different ways, but that they're pretty much disclosing mostly what they're supposed to. They're not 100%. But anyway, this getting of a good faith compliance standard was really important so that people aren't fined for little things that they didn't realize they weren't doing correctly. Also, the issue of whether or not commissions were paid in the individual market during special enrollment periods as opposed to open enrollment. For a while, some carriers were not paying commissions during that period of time, and we'd worked really hard to get that reinstated, and we were successful with that. And then we're working a lot right now on the unwinding. So and that has to do with people who were automatically qualified for Medicaid, who are now coming off of that. They are no longer qualified for Medicaid. During the public health emergency, they did not requalify people at all. And so now they're all coming off, and they will have to be requalified again. And a lot of people will not qualify. So they'll all be coming off and need to find coverage either in the individual market or on an employer-sponsored plan and so forth. And we're very involved with the whole unwinding process. And then the original request for delays and the prescription drug reporting requirements that was changed originally, we were involved with that. And so that's just some examples of what it means to advocate. I want to talk about a couple of things relative to the Inflation Reduction Act, which had a lot of things in it, but some of them had to do with Medicare. And I know that most of you work in the group space, but I'm betting that either you or someone in your agency also has to deal with Medicare because you've got people that either age into that system or you've decided it's just a good line of business to pursue in your agency. And I'm seeing that more and more in agencies that never ever worked on Medicare, and then they used to hand it off to some other person that they had an arrangement with, and now they're setting up people in their own agencies to deal with it. So I wanted to touch on a couple of things that are important to remember about the Inflation Reduction Act. When mainly this has to do only with the aspects that relate to prescription drug pricing. So when the Inflation Reduction Act went into effect, a lot of potentially very good changes relative to the cost of prescription drugs are coming into phase on a phased-in basis. And this phase-in allows only certain prescription drugs to be negotiated, and it's part of it is an extent, and then the other part of it was an extension of the amounts of the tax credits that were originally done under pandemic relief under the American Rescue Act. That was extended through 2025, and I am pretty sure that eventually all of those tax credits will be the way the formula they have now will be permanent. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. But I want to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act to make sure that because you might be asked this question, so I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, when they look at which drugs that they're going to be doing these negotiations on, it's not going to be just any drugs that they might decide that they want to select. So they're not going to look for example, just some drug because it's a popular drug if that drug already has a good competition. So what they're looking for are markets where there's only one player in the market, or maybe only 2 players in a market where there should be 6 players. They're looking for non-competitive markets. So that would even include something like a biologic drug where the biosimilar has just never been able to take off. So as we look at this, and right now we're talking about just the Medicare space, that doesn't mean that this won't have some spillover effect into the private market, or that they wouldn't decide to work on something quite similar in the private market. So I want to just tell you a little bit about how this is going to work. The first thing that they started off with was saying that they would cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Now, this is easy enough for the Medicare program to do because they can control the cost of insulin. It's not easy in the private market. And I will tell you that there is legislation that has been introduced in the private market to cap it at $35 a month. That is for private plans. That is not good legislation. And we're working to suppress that legislation until it can be modified to make it more effective. In other words, you don't want to just say, oh, now consumers are going to pay $35 a month, and then let the plans have to be responsible for paying it, all of your employer-sponsored plans, because that just ups the cost of coverage for everyone. So when we look at legislation, we want to make sure that if it's going to be a good consumer benefit, it's also affordable for the employer to do it, just as one example. But insulin now in the Medicare space is, this started in January 1st of this year, is now capped at $35 a month. And then starting in 2026, HHS will start negotiating different drugs. And they'll start with 10 drugs in 2026. They'll add more in 2027. You can see the chart there. I won't read it all to you. And each year, though, the test will be, they're not going to look at generic drugs unless there's some barrier to keep a generic drug from coming to market. So they're looking at markets where there's not enough competition. There are hundreds of thousands of drugs out there, and they don't have no desire to negotiate all of them, only where the competition is not working. And then starting next year, the 5% cost sharing in the catastrophic phase of Medicare Part D will go away. Part D spending in 2025 will be capped at $2,000 a year. And then there will be some other changes, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are just things that are important. Now, I was in a meeting recently, and I had a question that came from the audience that said, well, won't all of this really squeezing of the drug companies it'll be like squeezing a balloon, and won't it just go back into the commercial side of the market? There's a possibility that some of that could occur, but there are some provisions that are also embedded in there that kind of fine print type of things that say that if costs increase in any portion of the market, not just the Medicare side, but in the other side as well, more than a certain percentage in a given year, that there will be penalties associated with that. So there's a minimal amount of that could occur in terms of increases as a result of this. By the way, it's much, much harder for some, if we look, and if we had a question that said, well, would we have legislation that looks like this for the rest of the market? Because maybe that would really bring down the cost of coverage. And the answer to that is it's much, much more difficult to do that outside of a government controlled plan, which is what Medicare and Medicaid are. So it's not to say that would never occur or that parts of it wouldn't, but it will be much harder to pass that. However, some of those drug costs are going to spill over into the commercial market. It just always happens on other services as well. So a lot of what happens in Medicare does have a huge effect on the rest of the market. So I want to talk a little bit about quickly about the individual market, and then I'm going to go more into some of the other things going on. You know that we had the higher level of subsidies. I talked about that before. That was that were enacted, and we also had the family glitch that has now gone away through a regulatory basis. I'm very, very surprised that that was not challenged in court, and it may still be, although there have been questions over the years as to whether or not that could be changed on a regulatory basis like that. And I do think that even though we got these subsidies extended through 2025, as I said, I do think that this is something that their intention is to make permanent. And so sometimes when they only go for 3 years, the reason they do it is not because they don't believe it's a good program. It's because the budget will only allow them to go for 3 years or 2 years or however much it is, or 1 year sometimes. Okay, so there's some things that did not end up in an Inflation Reduction Act. And I want to just talk about them really quickly because they are super important that they're not in there. One of them is lowering the Medicare eligibility age to age 60. And some of you may, who have some very expensive Medicare, are people in their 60s on some of the health plans that you are responsible for. You may say, well, that might have been nice to get them off of the plan if they went on Medicare instead. This is actually a really anti-competitive language, and it is not something that would have benefited plans overall. This would have created a new public option that would have offered Medicare competing unfairly alongside regular private coverage. So it's a public option with kind of different clothes on, and it's a good way to unravel not just the individual market, but also the employer-sponsored market. It looks like it might be good, but it has a lot of unintended consequences if you actually do that. The other thing that was in there, and this is something that we're still working on, and it's a really tough cookie, is new penalties for employers because of non-compliance with mental health parity standards. And the problem with this is that a lot of the standards for which penalties would have been imposed are not defined clearly. So they're kind of subjective standards. It's very hard to know how to comply with a standard that is sort of characterized as, well, we'll know it if we see it. So usually it has to do with whether or not a network is adequate in kind of some specialty areas. So think of, do you have adequate mental health coverage for people with eating disorders, or for children who are suicidal, or things like that. They're very kind of specialty niches, and it's actually hard to find providers in that area. So there's still a lot of activity going on this in Congress. They're still working on this, but we're able to keep that language out of the Inflation Reduction Act. And then I've already talked about the insulin issue. A little bit I want to go back to really quickly touch on the Medicare marketing rule. Again, if you have someone in your agency working on this, you know about the recording requirement for Medicare marketing. I do not see this going away. I do think that they will make some changes to the way it's structured, but I don't think they have any intention of this going away. And the reason for this is they need to have this rule for certain segments of some people who are doing this marketing, even though it shouldn't apply to any of the people who might do this in your agencies. Because of the way you are structured, you aren't structured to do some of the things that they consider to be egregious behavior. But I don't see this going away because I don't feel like they have the ability in a country the size of ours with as many people doing the marketing to tell one which is which, because they can't just say, well, if you're licensed, you don't have to comply. If you complete your certification exam, you don't have to comply. And they are not able to do that because all of the people some of the people that are doing this, everyone meets those requirements. some people just don't perform the additional things they're supposed to do in order that would have prevented us from having this. That's an oversimplification, but I do see them maybe reducing the number of years that you have to keep these recordings and some things like that. We'll know more about that in just the next couple of months. And then I wanted to talk quickly about the FTC proposed rule on non-compete agreements. And I know that some of you may work in agencies where there are non-solicit agreements for relative to people who work in your agency, or some people that work on your agency. And first of all, I want to say that this proposed rule from the Federal Trade Commission that would ban non-compete agreements is not talking about banning non-solicit agreements. However, some of your clients, depending on what they do as their line of business, may use non-compete agreements. So we're still working on this issue because there are sometimes there are situations, particularly with people that are in the executive positions in some of the organizations that you work for, not your current agency, but your clients, who might have, they might have certain knowledge that would make them, it's their own personal knowledge, or it's their own, it's a certain type of knowledge that would make it inappropriate for them to not have a non-compete agreement. So we're, our contention on this is that really the Federal Trade Commission doesn't really have the authority to issue this a rule with this broad of a scope. The way they are supposed to work is they're supposed to find violations and do administrative hearings associated with those. And anytime they affect a rule, that's only supposed to happen very not too often, and it wouldn't be anything this broad. So we're working still on that. We'll let you know. The comment period is coming up in about a week and a half, and we'll be submitting comments relative to that, and we'll keep you informed as to what we hear about that and to whether or not this goes through. But in any case, just know that it already does not apply to non-solicit agreements. And then I want to let you know some of the main things that we are working on that are super important. And one of those has to do with cost of care issues. In fact, cost of care issues are the most important thing that we work on, because if the cost of medical care itself becomes too expensive, then we won't be able, it kind of cuts off the conversation about anything else. If you're unable to pay for coverage because the cost of the care that the coverage is for is too expensive, then that's a different matter. So one of the things that we're working on is site neutral payments. We're working on a lot of different things, but one of them is site neutral payments. And we're also working on health sector consolidation. We're looking at things like value-based purchasing care, integrated care, like accountable care organizations, and kind of other pay for performance things, and that type of thing. So there's a lot of different things appropriate to that. We're also, and I'm going to go more into site neutral in just a minute, but I also want to say that there are other things out there that might look like they have to do with cost of care, but they're not the right types of issues. So for example, there's legislation out there that's pending relative to end-stage renal disease that would basically totally ruin your networks relative to dialysis care by requiring that the two most expensive and the largest dialysis providers be in the preferred tier on every network, and regardless of the ability to negotiate the cost of that. So it would really increase the cost of care for the plans that you work with. Also, this Insulin Act relative to the $35 copay and expanding it to private plans without otherwise addressing the cost of insulin itself. I mentioned the mental health network insufficiencies without, I'm not talking about the fact that people shouldn't have mental health parity. I'm talking about when they're unable to contract with providers through no fault of their own because there aren't enough providers that type of thing. And then we've still got some people out there that are really threatening and trying to water down the No Surprises Act, which is really a shame. And then relative to site neutral, just to make this one change alone, even if it were changed only in the Medicare market, would shave billions of dollars from the system immediately. And all it has to do with is saying that, look, if you're having an MRI, the cost for the MRI should be the same no matter where you have it. And we often see that when a hospital buys up ancillary practices or physicians' practices, that the cost for the same test that you had or the same physician's visit can go up astronomically overnight. So if Medicare changes the way they pay for it, because many employer plans base their payments on a percentage of what Medicare pays, it would have an immediate trickle down into the private market as well. So we're spending a lot of time working on site neutral payments. And that's so the rates would be controlled on the Medicare side. It would be much harder to do that in the private space. And then the other thing, just to mention really quickly, we're still working on the employer tax exclusion. So to make sure we're not confused about which thing I'm talking about, the tax exclusion is not the employer's deduction for a business expense. No one's trying to take that away. What they're looking at is whether or not people should have this really expensive benefit that their employers pay for on their health insurance, and whether that should really be tax-free for them. So if their employer is paying $10,000 or $15,000 a year or more for health insurance coverage, shouldn't that be a taxable event? And we are saying absolutely not. It should still be excluded from taxation the same way that it has been for many, many, many years. In fact, it's the largest tax break in this country. And the problem now is that it has become such a large tax break because the cost of care keeps going up and up and up, which means the cost of coverage keeps going up and up and up, that the tax break results in it's a $600 billion a year, what's considered a loss in federal revenue because it's a tax preferred benefit. So there's always someone looking to say, well, can we take a little bit of money from the exclusion to pay for something else? Or can we cap it? Can we take it away? Can we do something different? And what would happen is that when you make this something like that taxable, the people who would drop out of your plans are the young and healthy ones, not the ones that are sick. So it would only make the cost of care and coverage much more expensive. And very exciting, we just had new legislation introduced on employer reporting. This might be helpful to some of you. So for those of you who help your clients with employer reporting, and people want to keep on with the reporting system that we have, they could, but this establishes a new voluntary system for people for whom the current system does not work well for them, which would allow them to do everything prospectively at the beginning of the year in a much more simplified fashion, rather than retrospectively at the end of the year with all of the details that are currently required. So this is it's a much simpler system, and it's also much more accurate in terms of how the exchanges would know whether or not someone has a valid offer of employer coverage as well. And then the other thing that we are still working on is trying to get COBRA to be considered creditable coverage for Medicare beneficiaries so they don't end up having Part B and Part D penalties. And we're also working relative to some Part D open enrollments. There's a lot of things that we're working on cost of care. I didn't itemize everything. We're working on things relative to HSAs and making them more friendly by modernizing the definition of a qualified high deductible health plan. And so a lot of things relative to that, a lot of other things relative to telehealth. And then we have regulations that come out that we comment on all of the time. So there's a lot of other things. I just kind of skimmed over some of the big ones that we're working on right now, but there are many others that we have a whole government affairs team that works on this for NABIP. I guess I can stop there and answer any questions that people have. If I have time. Do I have time, Andrea? You're on mute, I think.
Yes, we can certainly see if anybody has questions. So Janet can, answer if you have a compliance question, a legislative question. A question that I have, Janet, is are attendees able to receive like newsletters and that type of thing from NABIP if they went onto the website? Is that something that they can do?
There's a lot of information on our website that's just open and you can get into a lot of it. If you're a member, you get a lot of stuff from us. We send a lot of information, newsletters. Another thing that would be interesting that I suggest that you do. So you guys write this down. It's the NABIP, NABIP Healthcare Happy Hour podcast. You can be a member or not a member. It comes out every Friday. It's about 15-20 minutes. And it kind of goes through either something important that's going on that week in Congress, or it might be about just some interesting industry topic. Depends on what we're doing that week. But most of the time it's legislative in nature. And so that I would recommend that you listen to that. But I hope that, we have better pricing for UBA. So I hope that I think a lot of you are agencies. Some of you may already be members. I hope you are. You get a lot of information from us that way. But if you just go on our website, nabip.org, not .com. Please don't go on .com. It's not a good website. It's nabip.org. You'll find so much information there. There's all kinds of things that you can just access. We don't have too much of it that's firewalled. So you'll be able to find some things I think that you'll find interesting.
So for those of you who don't know, at least one member of every UBA partner firm is also a member of NABIP. So we do rely on each other. NABIP provides some amazing education opportunities, much broader opportunities than directly from UBA. So you can definitely take a look at their site from that aspect as well. But we do encourage you to go onto their site. There's just so much information, and it'll really keep you current in front of your clients if you can speak to what's happening in the legislative world as it pertains to group health plans. It's a very, very impressive thing when you have that opportunity and the ability to speak to that to your clients. I will tell you from my own experience. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you so much, Janet. This is really wonderful. And thank you all for attending day one, and we will see you on Wednesday for day 2 of the Account Manager Academy. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.